We should get going to avoid people from missing their transportation needs as they come and go from Sacramento here. So we're going to start now. We have several of our committee members present. So this is the Senate Committee on Transportation and Housing. I'm Jim Bell, Chairman, and we will start our meeting. We are very pleased to host today the meeting, an informational hearing, high-speed rail, where we are now and where we are heading. We will have the informational hearing and adjourn the informational hearing and then take up our regular meeting, which will consist of one item, SCA 2, Senate Constitutional Amendment 2, by Senator Newman. So those of you who have a desire to speak on Senate Constitutional Amendment 2, we will do that subsequent to the informational hearing. Today, we acknowledge representatives from the High-Speed Rail Authority, local businesses, and the High-Speed Rail Authority peer review group, and thank you for providing us with the information. We also have Caltrain and Metrolink, which are connected partners to the High-Speed Rail project, and thank you. We'll get a status update on the High-Speed Rail project, and we'll hear from our panelists regarding the progress and the work performed by local businesses and the fiscal outlook as the project moves ahead and moves forward. This project is a monumental task, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we all know there are many challenges on our way to completing the project. If the project is to keep moving forward and be successfully completed, not only the High-Speed Rail Authority, but we, the legislature, and the state of California, all have a part in addressing these challenges that makes this project a success. However, right now we're continuing construction, and the project is being built, and without, the authority has been successful in working with local and small businesses, providing economic growth in our Central Valley. Further, the authority, together with the peer review group, has developed a dashboard of key measurements that are published on a quarterly basis. The document has been effective for me and others that are monitoring the project in providing important information about the status of the project. Now, as chair of the committee, I look forward to hearing from those testifying today on the status and how we move forward with this project. And with that, I'll ask committee members if they have any comments, and we'll ask that the first panel please come forward and begin our hearing. Thank you. And we have a panelist, Dan Richard, the chair of our High-Speed Rail Authority, and the executive officer, Jeff Morales of the High-Speed Rail Authority. We have council member Oliver Baines from the city of Fresno, Curtis Lovett, owner of Outback Materials, and Dr. Veda Wright from the Verdrico group. So that's our first panelist, and we'll turn it over to the panelists at this time. So welcome to the hearing before the Transportation Committee.
Mr. Chairman and other honorable members of this committee, thank you. My name is Dan Richard. I'm the chair of the High-Speed Rail Authority Board. It's my pleasure and an honor to be here today. Mr. Chairman, as you said, this is a momentous project, and I appreciate the way you said we all have a stake in this. Part of our responsibility is not only to make sure that we are the effective stewards of public resources, but also to make sure that we are responsive to the oversight responsibilities of the legislature. And so we always appreciate the opportunity to come here and to answer your questions. I would note that I'm going to keep my opening remarks very short. There's a second panel on financing that will get into more substantive matters. I also would like to keep my remarks short because we, as I think the members know, we just delivered in the last few days a project update report required by Senate Bill 1029, which the legislature added to the appropriation bill for high-speed rail to assure ongoing oversight of the project. And I believe that this report, which is entitled Managing the Nation's Largest Infrastructure Project, talks about where the project stands in terms of its costs and risks and so forth. I would just make a couple of quick points here. First of all, we're certainly not, we're not unaware of the controversial nature of much that surrounds this project. I think it probably goes with the territory these days of trying to do anything of this magnitude in America. But I would tell you that it's always important to come back to kind of the fundamental question. And often people ask me, well, why does California need a high-speed rail system? And I respectfully always suggest that perhaps that's not the right starting place. The right starting place is to envision a state by mid-century that's going to have 50 million people. And the question for us as leaders, you as the people's representatives in the legislature and those of us who are in the executive branch, is how we plan today to meet that challenge. We think that the data has shown that alternative investments to provide mobility for those 50 million people would cost 2 to 3 times what we're talking about here, and not provide the sustainability benefits that high-speed rail does provide. The authors of the High-Speed Rail Bond Act had a vision that this transportation system would connect areas of California. And I think one of the things you're going to hear today when you hear from the small businesses is about the impact of high-speed rail on one of our most underinvested areas in California, in the Central Valley. The counties of Fresno and Merced have the 2 highest poverty rates in the state, in excess of 25%. And we are making a multi-billion-dollar investment there to connect that economic and socioeconomic region with the rest of the state. Very quickly, in our 2016 business plan that we developed last spring, we indicated that the high-speed rail program has now moved from the planning stage to the project delivery stage. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, construction is underway across the Central Valley. My colleague, Mr. Morales, is going to update you on that. But we also articulated for the legislature and the public in that business plan a real confidence that we have a path to getting the high-speed rail program up and running, and it's really based on 3 legs of the stool. First, we envisioned the first operating segment that would connect the Central Valley to Silicon Valley. And this could have transformative effects on both regions. Central Valley needs the investment. Silicon Valley has no place to house people who are working in what is the engine of the California economy. Second, and we see that with the resources that we would have, particularly if cap and trade is extended, which we hope that issue is clarified by the legislature, that under a constrained budget scenario, we have enough resources to make that connection between the federal dollars, the bond dollars, and the cap and trade dollars. And that's a very significant determination we made. Second, we've been very proud of the fact, going back 5 years, that we described the program as not a standalone transportation system, but as an integral part of an integrated rail modernization system in California. It becomes essential for us to work with local and regional transportation systems to connect to high-speed rail. And we're the backbone of that, but we're making parallel investments in Southern California and in the bookends with some very critical, timely investments that have immediate beneficial effects throughout the state. And third, we continue to do the work necessary to prepare for other legs of the project to be built when funding becomes available. So we have a very clear sense of how we want to do this, and what I'm going to talk about in the next panel is how we're addressing and managing risks, financial and otherwise. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I again want to thank you for the opportunity to appear here today.
Thank you, Chair Richard. You know, I see you have a few of your colleagues on the commission. You mind if we you introduce your colleagues that are here so we can respectfully thank them for their service.
So I saw Danny Curtin, who was here.
All right.
I didn't see who else is here. So we have two members who, so we have Mr. Daniel Curtin and also one of your former colleagues, former Assembly Member Bonnie Lowenthal. Both of them are appointees of the Speaker of the State Assembly to our board. Our board has members from the governor as well as the legislature, and they've become very, very valued colleagues for us. I don't know if I had any other members back.
Oh, you have the great former Assemblywoman from the Long Beach area, Bonnie Lowenthal.
I did mention her when you were doing sidebar, so.
That's great. We appreciate her presence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Members, we'll turn it over to the next speaker, and thank you, Dan, for your brief remarks, and we'll get into more of your subject at the next panel, but turn it over to Jeff and
We can do
Oliver. You guys decide which one.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, let me, and members, I'm going to focus in on where we are in the project and what the benefits are, but Oliver Baines, a city council member from Fresno, is here with us and has a train to catch, very appropriately,
Okay,
to get back
Councilman
down
has
to
to get
business.
back to
So
Fresno.
I'd like to let him talk
We'll
about what's.
turn it over to the councilman from Fresno, who's done great things, and we're going to hear about his situation with the high-speed rail. I'll turn it over to you, Oliver. Thank you for coming up and visiting with us in Sacramento.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jeff, for allowing me to go ahead of you. It's always very difficult, as Jeff will tell you, to follow Chairman Richard, so I'll do my best. And I'm going to be brief, just for the committee here, and really kind of focus on a couple key important issues that Fresno, the benefit that Fresno was seeing from the high-speed rail investment. It first should be noted that the city of Fresno, by resolution, supports the project. We have enjoyed, for the last several years, as many of you know, bipartisan support on this project, which is, in the state of California, a bit of a rarity. So we have a lot of pride in that. One of the reasons I think that we enjoy that type of support in Fresno really, Mr. Chairman, speaks to what we see is happening with high-speed rail, this investment in our community. And I'm going to highlight kind of two strings of those. There are multiple reasons why we support the project, but the two most important in the city of Fresno really focus around the economic development that we are seeing and also the gains that we're seeing in our workforce, which cannot be understated. We have seen, right now we have about 10% of the project that we know is underway. We've already seen 800 people employed. And I've made it a very significant part of my life to make sure, as the chairman mentioned, Fresno is home, unfortunately, to some of the poorest census tracts in the nation, not just the state, the nation. And what we are doing with this investment in high-speed rail is trying to move the poverty needle. It is a conversation, unfortunately, that gets left behind in the grand scheme of things, our obligation as public stewards to make sure that we are moving people out of poverty. Well, in Fresno, we have aligned our workforce development programs along with this investment to literally take people that are on welfare and move them into the workforce of this project. And I have witnessed it firsthand, up close and personal, with projects with programs that I enjoy. I can tell you about a young woman who was on welfare for 5 years, came to one of our programs that we are aligned directly with the authority. 12 weeks later, she graduates from the program, and she's working on high-speed rail. And the very first week that she starts working for high-speed rail, she's off welfare. And while I would like to, it would almost seem like that is a one-off story. That is the story that we are seeing time and time again. Every single person that we are putting through our workforce training programs are coming off of the subsidized system. So we are seeing the direct investment from high-speed rail in this project to literally changing the focus of poverty in Fresno. It's a major, major impact for us. I'd like to follow up with that with the economic development. You'll be able to hear more from some of the panelists later that I think are getting some of the work. But what we are seeing is a tremendous leverage point. There's a $500 million infrastructure investment that the authority is making in the city of Fresno that is improving our entire infrastructure along the alignment. But most importantly is the work that we're doing downtown. So while we are focusing on moving our workforce out of poverty, we are also making strategic investments in our downtown area where the high-speed rail station is going to go. So we are preparing the road for the high-speed rail station that we know is going to be one of the finest in the world when it's done, and we are ready and waiting for that investment. And so with our private investors, we have about $100 million of investment that is coming to the downtown area because they understand that the high-speed rail station is going. So we are seeing the private investment flow in. We are leveraging that with public investment through our own infrastructure projects, and all really because of the impetus of high-speed rail. So as a council member in the city of Fresno, and just really being able to peel off a couple of things that I think are important for this committee to factor in, we are seeing major gains in our workforce. We're moving the poverty needle. We're taking people off of the system and putting them to work. And we are also watching the private sector make major investments in some of the most distressed parts of our city because of the high-speed rail investment. So again, I'll end where I began. In Fresno, we're a little rare. We publicly support this project by resolution, and we've enjoyed bipartisan support for a very long time. And I gave you just a couple of reasons why. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the committee for taking my remarks.
Thank you, Oliver, for coming here. I appreciate your commenting specifically about economic development, social impact of the project. And we are pursuing infrastructure policy in this committee to link workforce development goals that we have for ending poverty through developing our workforce and infrastructure projects. We hope to use the high-speed rail system they have as an example. And I want to ask you, do you think as a state, California would lift the bar for everybody if we had similar policies all over the state?
Without question. That is probably the easiest question I've ever been asked. There's no question, Mr. Chairman, that yes, with the partnership that we are enjoying with high-speed rail, with the strategic investment and of calling out the need to move the poverty needle, absolutely. And what we do in Fresno is we've also put policies in place to aid the goals of the authority and also our investment. So absolutely, Mr. Chairman, I think the state should be looking to make this a practice as a matter of policy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And if
have a nice trip home.
Yes, thank you. I didn't want to just run, but thank you. I'm gonna step off now.
I told the councilman that I would travel to Fresno and then visit and learn more about their workforce investment program that links with transportation, because as he said, that would be a benefit to the whole state of California. Looking at that kind of linkage that we can strengthen through our laws that we have in developing infrastructure in California. So I'll turn it now over to Jeff Morales, Executive Director of the High-Speed Rail Authority. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. And I just want to underscore the tremendous partnership we have with the city of Fresno. Councilman Baines noted that, and it's a partnership that's paying real dividends. And I noted that Oliver used a word a number of times, which I think is really significant and is going to be a continuing theme of what you'll hear from us today, and that word was investment. And I think the significance there being that what we are doing is investing in California with this program, and what we want to focus on are the dividends that the state is seeing from those investments and as we move forward. To some people, it's the best kept secret in the state that we are actually under construction, but it is true. We have 119 miles under contract, underway, and that's part of what's producing the real benefits that Councilmember Baines spoke about and which you'll hear about from the other panelists coming up. But under the old premise that a picture's worth 1,000 words, I wanted to, we have little video that we're gonna, if I can do this, we'll show you.
See, okay, they got it up there. They got it up there.
1,000 pictures with 1,000.
Well,
Okay.
Road 27 is the northernmost work site on the project, where crews have completed drilling and pouring concrete for support piers and abutments. Completion of this segment will allow traffic to safely cross over the existing BNSF tracks and future high-speed rail lines, eliminating the existing gated crossing and improving area safety. The Fresno River Viaduct, located just outside the city of Madera, was the first work site of the high-speed rail project and is now nearing completion. The superstructure is finished and crews have started work on the barrier walls. This project should be complete later this year. Like Road 27, Avenue 8 is an overcrossing that will allow safe passage for vehicles over existing and future rail lines. MSE walls are complete and crews are currently working to finish the embankments. Rising waters from the long, wet winter have moved the focus of work at the San Joaquin River to the pergola structure near Herndon Avenue in the city of Fresno. It will allow high-speed trains to pass over Union Pacific tracks. Crews are currently drilling into the earth to install rebar columns and steel culverts. There are many that will need to be completed. The pergola itself will be built on more than 50 columns. In the heart of Fresno, the State Route 99 realignment project is well underway. This section of highway between Ashland and Clinton Avenues is being moved 100 feet to the west to make room for high-speed rail tracks. You can see some paving is already complete. Utility relocation, electrical work, including the installation of lighting, and the installation of curbs and gutters are underway along various sections of the project. You can now start to see the outlines of the Fresno Trench in central Fresno. A section of the future trench is now lined with rebar columns. Drilling activities are moving north toward the start of the trench between Belmont and Olive Avenues. Meanwhile, crews working at the connected State Route 180 passageway are installing temporary structures to stabilize the area as they construct the box that will allow high-speed trains to pass under the highway. A little more than a year after the demolition of the old one-way Tuolumne Street Bridge began, the new two-way bridge is nearly complete. The bridge deck is complete with work continuing on barrier walls. Utility relocation is also underway at the east side of the bridge. Once complete, crews will finish the abutment, joining the bridge to the pre-existing street. The Cedar Viaduct is the program's most visible structure as it sits just yards from State Route 99. Workers from Southern California-based Martinez Steel were installing rebar on one section, preparing for the next concrete pour, while other workers from Bay Area-based Schwager Davis were completing pre-tensioning work, pulling these metal cables with more than 8,000 pounds of pressure. Work on this project is moving beyond North Avenue, where crews have started the construction of columns and abutments. Construction Package 2-3 extends from American Avenue in Fresno to the Kings-Tulare County line. Just this week, crews have restarted a road improvement project, which includes asphalt overlay work on Road 40. That work is expected to last several weeks. And finally, in Construction Package 4, crews are busy with right-of-way and geotechnical work. Here we see crews potholing, a procedure used to find utility lines, as they prepare for construction later this year.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think, again, proof that, in fact, construction is happening, and it's producing dividends. As we said, again, we've got 11 major construction sites underway, several others in various forms of development, and that's producing the economic benefits that we're talking about. As we develop the program, obviously, there are the long-term benefits that are going to accrue to the state in terms of mobility, air quality, all those things, but one of the things we committed to was making this program a model for how you can deliver an infrastructure program in the state, and do that in two ways. One, not just deliver the long-term economic developments that will come with connectivity of the state, but to make sure that we're injecting into the state the economic benefits of this investment as it's happening, and we'll talk more about how we're doing that. And then secondly, to make this the greenest, biggest infrastructure project in the country. By employing a number of ways to make sure that as we deliver it, we're doing it in a sustainable and responsible way. And some of the results we're seeing early on, we're closing in on 1,000 construction workers now on site, and you saw those. And one of the important elements of that we put requirements in our contract for targeted hiring. As Chairman Richard noted earlier, the Central Valley has suffered the highest unemployment rate in the state. In the construction trades, it's been even higher, 25 to 35% unemployment in the construction trades. Of those nearly 1,000 construction workers to date, 80%, a little over 80%, come from the Central Valley because of the requirements we put in the contract. So we're seeing a real direct benefit come right where it's needed most. And we're developing, and Councilman Bain spoke to it, some pre-apprenticeship programs, working with the workforce and development boards and with the trade unions to make sure that we are not only hiring people now, but developing a pipeline of people who can come into the work that's going to continue on this program, and that will result as based on the other investments that being made in the area. And the impact is real. We're still at the ramp-up stage of construction. As significant as it is, it's only going to get larger. But there have been independent reports that show that the impact on the unemployment rate in the Central Valley is real. It's measurable. For only the fourth time in the last 25 years, unemployment dipping below 10% in the Fresno area. And that study pointed specifically to the high-speed rail investment as a key part of why that's happening. You know, we often talk in big multipliers and things about what infrastructure investment can mean, and that's what we're seeing. We can trace for every one of those construction jobs you see out there, can be dozens of other jobs happening behind the scenes in the supply industry and all the others, and we'll hear again from some of the others here. But we can trace now with the funds that we have invested in this program, and significantly, virtually all of this money to date has been federal money that's producing this result. So it's putting federal money to work here in California, but supporting approximately 20,000 jobs, seeing a huge boost into the state's economy as a result of smart strategic investment in this program. A key element of this, and you'll hear more from some of our panelists, is our commitment to small business. That's something that the board adopted a goal back in 2012. I'm pleased to say that on every contract that we have awarded since, we have hit the goal. One of the important things about small businesses is that almost by definition, they're local, and that's what we're seeing. 334 businesses, just about all of them California small businesses. So what, again, that means is we're investing back in the state, back in the state's workers. We have the 10% DBE goal, and we have a 3% disabled veteran business goal. Very pleased to say we have actually, in terms of our actual achievement, we've almost more than tripled that 3%. We're at almost 10% disabled veteran business participation due to the outreach efforts that we've made in working with our prime contractors to make sure that we give these businesses an opportunity to be a part of this program. On the sustainability side, again, we made similar sorts of commitments. Now, long-term, big impact of investing in rail and high-speed rail in the state is going to be the shift away or to clean electric transportation. Significant GHG reductions. That's important, among other things, because of the funding that we're receiving through the cap and trade program, and we think it's important to be able to demonstrate those benefits. We've also committed to having all of our stations be zero net energy and to meet LEED Platinum design standards. During the construction, much as we've done on the employment side, we've also taken some steps to make sure that we're being as green as we can be. So for instance, we require the recycling of concrete and steel on the project. So every building that is demolished, for instance, all of that concrete, all of that steel goes back into the project, not into landfills. We've been able to divert 97%, I believe, of all of that to date. We're making investments. We've required all of our contractors to use the very latest EPA Tier 4 certified equipment. It's just a requirement we put in the contracts. And so what that means is the very cleanest equipment that's available anywhere in the country is being used on this program. We're continuing to push things such as the use of renewable diesel, which is super low emissions. That means rather than having to offset emissions, we eliminate them in the first place. And so we're moving forward with those requirements as well. All told, what that translates into is a commitment on the biggest infrastructure project in the country to be zero net emissions during construction. A pretty aggressive goal, but it's achievable, and we're doing it with our contractors and through the various methods and in partnership with local agencies. For instance, we've funded work at the San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District to replace diesel farm equipment with electric, diesel irrigation pumps, other things like that with electric. And as a result of that, we have already more than offset the emissions that we'll see during the first construction package through these steps that we've taken locally, and those will be permanent. Those are not just temporary improvements, but they will continue to go on. As we go forward, we'll be planting trees. We were pleased to see a lot of rain this winter so that we can plant trees. We are entering in that partnership, in a partnership with the state to see those done. We've also made an important commitment to mitigation and to preservation of farmland and preserving property, and we've already begun with the first elements, acquiring some properties that now will be permanently preserved as part of our mitigation effort. You probably know that in the Central Valley, loss of farmland is a major issue. About 10,000 acres a year are being lost to development. And so by us working through this process, we're helping make sure that some of this land is preserved in perpetuity for the state. Let's see, I think, and with that, we wanted to turn to our partners here who are part of this program in terms of our small business programs and participation in the program. So, Mr. Chairman, if we could.
Thank you. I think, Curtis, you're first, or I believe. And maybe you can go where Oliver was sitting. It'd be better if you can sit over there for our members. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good. Is that the way you want to do it? Dr. Wright and Curtis, you want to? Okay. Curtis Lovett, the owner of Outback Materials. Curtis, you have the floor.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity of appearing here today and talking a little bit about the impact of the high-speed rail on my business. I own a company called Outback Materials. We're a ready-mix concrete and trucking company that was started in March 12th of 1968 in Madera County in Oakhurst, just south of Yosemite. It's nice to see the mural up here depicting the landscape of our area. We're the only American-owned, family-operated business in our industry remaining in Fresno and Madera County. We compete with multinational companies that are owned and headquartered overseas. And this opportunity for us to bid the high-speed rail was a big opportunity for us, especially after the financial crisis in 2009. We were questioning how we were going to invest another $8 million in equipment to comply with the Air Resource Board on-road diesel rules. Our sales have now jumped from $7 million a year up to 17 as a result of this project, and we've been able to invest $7 million in trucks and equipment and move a new operation into Fresno County in the city of Fresno, which we'd longed to go to but had no project to go for. So this has given us a new location and given customers in the area an opportunity to buy from a local company. And so it's been beneficial for us in terms of employment. We started the project with 32 employees, and now we have 65. These are well-paying jobs. We're also able to use our revenue to expand our health programs and dental programs and vision program for our employees and their families. It's been a great opportunity for us to grow our business. We've also been able to work closer with our community partners, Little Leagues and other groups, to help them out in expanding their their goals and objectives in terms of enrollment and other things, baseball programs and programs in Fresno for the homeless and other things. I think for us, from an environmental standpoint, we've been able to, when we did the investment in Fresno, we were able to use state-of-the-art technology. We're reclaiming 100% of our water today and reusing it in the production of our concrete, which is something that that is not able to be done elsewhere, I guess, or has been or tried or attempted. We're also exploring the use of solar. We have a meeting this week to look at solar power for our ready-mix operation, which is something that's unusual in our industry. And we're evaluating use of a technology called Carbon Cure, where we purchase CO2 and put it back into the concrete, and it produces calcium carbonate and actually increases the strength of the concrete. And as a result, we're able to reduce the cement that we consume and use, which is one of the largest industries that CO2 emissions. And so we're able to reduce our carbon footprint through the use of this technology. So we're doing everything we can to have a green company and to use our resources accordingly. So we're thrilled at the opportunity of high-speed rail. I have to say that in Fresno, I can't speak to the details of what's happened. I can just say that it's difficult to get into restaurants, find hotel rooms. Flight lines are longer. Unfortunately, TSA is doing a booming business into Fresno. And yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of my friends ask me about high-speed rail, and they tell me, well, you're getting a check every day from high-speed rail. So I mean, it's certainly a benefit, economic benefit. So you're bought and paid for by the high-speed rail. And I tell them, well, what are you going to do with 15 million people? Where are you going to put them? And like this mural, I mean, these people didn't start the state. We're still not driving horses. We're using cars and automobiles, and we need to be using high-speed rail to move our people around. And I see the benefit long-term of this investment in Fresno particular as becoming a bedroom community and a supply of labor, affordable housing for people that can work in the Bay Area and commute on 40 minutes. So I see a complete transformation long-term of the Central Valley. And when I share that vision with my friends, it clicks to them. It resonates with them. They go, yeah, I get that. And they see the jobs and they see the income in Fresno, and all of my business colleagues and associates are quite happy to have the money floating through the economy locally. It's been a big boom for us, and grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you, Curtis. Dr. Wright, and then we'll have questions from the members, okay, for the panel. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity to express my support for the California High-Speed Rail project. My name is Vida Wright, and I own a small business in Roseville, California. I would like to briefly acquaint you with my background. I have a PhD in civil and environmental engineering from University of California at Davis, and I'm also a registered professional engineer in the state of California. Prior to starting my business in 2007, I worked in increasingly responsible senior management position for Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 engineering and construction companies, managing major programs and projects for Department of Defense and Department of Energy clients. But when I started my business, the view was very different from where I was sitting compared to when I worked for major corporations. It is simply very difficult for a small business, no matter how qualified or how experienced, to have a seat at the table with large businesses working and contributing to a major project. And I think that is why I think the High-Speed Rail Authority's commitment and goal of 30% small business participation is really admirable. This project has helped numerous small businesses throughout California to grow and prosper and further develop, which overall helps our economy. I have been a supporter of California High-Speed Rail project since 2012 when I first attended an outreach event hosted by the authority. At that time, I was the regional vice president for the Society of American Military Engineers, known as SAME. SAME is a worldwide organization with a mission of bringing together engineers in our uniformed services with private sector professionals to work together in support of our national security challenges. I felt that this project was a great project to put our returning veterans to work. So in 2014, I urged SAME national leadership to lend its support to the project and allow my region to participate in the authority's Business Advisory Council. This is a relationship that has continued to date. My company, as a subcontractor to Parsons Brinker Hoff, provides contract and project management support services for high-speed rail-related projects in the North region. I sincerely can say not only this project has been very beneficial financially for my company, it also has become a highlight of my own career. I would like to express my gratitude to our governor, Governor Braun, for his leadership, and to our state legislators for their continued support of this project. It is very natural to be excited and interested in a project that I believe is creating, is basically transforming our transportation system, is helping our environment, and will create mobility for the Californians in the decades to come. I'm also appreciative to Chairman Richard and the Authority Board of Directors for their unwavering support and commitment to small businesses. And also, none of this obviously would have been possible without CEO Morales and his staff commitment and dedication to making sure that small businesses have numerous opportunities to participate in this remarkable and transformative project and basically contribute to building the first high-speed rail in our nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have any, maybe give us some more about the veterans program that Dr. Wright has identified, and how did that come together in the High-Speed Rail Authority? And maybe you can comment about, it seems like you said there was like a kind of a upsurge of interest in it right away, correct?
Yes,
so,
we had, as they were like drawing the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, we have a lot of veterans coming back, and I'm sure Jeff can explain that many of them now are gainfully employed on this project.
yeah, Jeff?
Sure, Senator, and I should note that an important contributor to the commitment of the authority to this started back with Tom Umberg, former member of the Assembly and former board chair, who was a real advocate for veterans programs and helped put them in place. But there are two major ways that we're really focused on veterans. One, on the hiring side, through the construction projects. We have, as I mentioned, the targeted hiring program that includes a partnership with something called Helmets to Hard Hats for returning veterans, to get veterans in, transition them from coming back from active duty into the workforce. And we've seen some great success with that, of getting people employed in the construction industry. On the business side, the state has a requirement for 3% of contract values, total project values going to disabled veteran business enterprises. We not only embrace that goal, but have worked to exceed it. And as I mentioned, we're at almost 10%. And we've done that in part, as Dr. Wright noted, through extensive outreach programs. And you had the chance, I believe, last week to participate in one where we not only make the small businesses aware of what the opportunities are, and if they need it, we help them get certified, help them get whatever training they might need, but also connect them with the prime contractors. Because on most of our contracts are massive, they're beyond the reach of a small business, and so small business participation is as a subcontractor. And so teaming them with the right partners is a critical element of it. We've got dedicated staff doing that, and again, have been very proud of our track record to date of being able to meet the goal, and in the case of disabled veterans, exceed the goal to date.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Wright, can you talk a little more about I'm very interested in that military civilian engineering group. Can you tell us about that? Because I think that's getting engineers that are in our service to come in and start working on our infrastructure project, I think would be, seems like a natural, great idea. So can you describe that, how you guys worked on that?
Yes, so the organization I'm talking about is Society of American Military Engineers, actually has been around for almost 100 years. And the mission of the organization is to bring the engineers that work for uniformed services, Army, Navy, National Guard, Coast Guard, and kind of get them together with private sector professionals to kind of collaborate, primarily in support of national security challenges. But we, as I mentioned, we since the drawdown of the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, many of them were coming back, and they are all very trained, engineers, mechanics, communication experts. And so I mentioned these to our organization, SAME. They normally do not get very involved in, projects. But when I mentioned to them that this was a project that could actually help our organization kind of with the veterans that are coming back and connecting them with this project, then of course they were very receptive to, to support the project and allow my region, to participate in Business Advisory Council. And I did have actually a lot of the speakers from California High-Speed Rail Authority came and spoke in our events to kind of spread the word about the opportunities that are there. So it's been a great relationship, and it will continue.
Okay. Do we have questions? Senator Roth has a question. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At one of the first slide that you had up there had a little chart of the high-speed rail map. I don't know if that's going to be discussed in any detail later, but if not, I was just curious as to what the yellow line refers to. It's described as high-speed rail phase 2. Because it goes through inland Southern California, and I was just...
Well, you took note of that, sir, yes.
I did take note.
The authors of the Bond Act, and I always say it that way because those were folks who were around before I was, or Mr. Morales, or Governor Brown, but the authors of the Bond Act, which was placed before the voters in 2008, specified that the high-speed rail program should be built in 2 phases. Phase 1 was essentially LA, Anaheim to San Francisco, and that's probably denoted in a certain color there. And then phase 2 would be the connection from Los Angeles through the Inland Empire to San Diego, as well as the extension of the project in the Central Valley up to Sacramento. So the first phase is 520 miles. The total project with both phases would be 800 miles.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jeff, you were, Mr. Morales, you were the former director of Caltrans, correct? And,
Yes.
well,
Yes.
In terms of the other government entities that set MBWB goals and the kind of approach that you have at the high-speed rail, what's the big differences that you can point out that make your program, I guess, 3 times better than higher goal than the 10% goal that they have at Caltrans?
There are.
Talk about that.
Sure. There are some differences.
You're at 30 and they're at 10.
Right, and some of that is the basis of the different laws that they operate under and that we operate under. We have some advantages as a new organization with a new program, also in that our board was able to set a 30% goal without, if you will, the restriction of history. Because one of the things that Caltrans does is they have to set goals based on actual disparity studies of what the history of contracting has been and looking at availability. So we were able to set a goal really as an aspirational goal, as a target. And again, I think is part of the commitment that we've made to being a model for delivery in this. And we benefit also by, in some cases, the scale of this program is a challenge. In other cases, it's an opportunity. And I think this is one where it's an opportunity that we are able to attract. We get a lot of attention from the contracting community. We attract, the biggest, strongest, most experienced firms in the industry and from around the world, who have the experience and the ability to reach out and connect with small businesses. And I think Curtis is a great example of, had we not had the 30% goal, there's, I think, a very good likelihood that our prime contractor would have gone with one of the big international concrete firms. Because they knew they had to meet that 30% goal, it made them look at areas that they might not otherwise have looked, and through some of the outreach efforts, we were able to connect, and Outback Materials is just a fantastic story. Curtis alluded to it, but it's not just the additional revenues, but the investments they're making back in the community, the value of the plant that you've put into Fresno, that's now available for other work in the region. And so these investments go beyond the immediate work they're doing on our program and really are going to be long-term opportunities for these firms.
I had a question for Curtis. I want an honest opinion, Curtis.
You get from
I'm like very concerned about prices and bid values. And this sounds good to have these goals, but what's the bottom line in terms of prices for the High-Speed Rail Authority as a contractor versus how does it affect the prices to have more engagement with the businesses? Can you talk about that a little bit? You have to compete, right?
yes.
So let's talk about that. So it's a little uncomfortable, but I need to talk about this, okay?
No, it's
I'm the one that we have to figure out how to pay for everything here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as Mr. Morales said, that when I heard about the high-speed rail project, I submitted my resume and everything to Tudor Perini, who was the lead contractor on the project. And it took me about 4 weeks to be able to get okay, come and visit us, because, I'm an obscure company up in the foothills. And so we went down, and one of the steps was to provide pricing for the project. So I submitted pricing, and I got a call back and an invitation to come and meet with Mr. Tudor. And if you know Mr. Tudor at all, or his reputation, you'll understand that you're not going to get the work if you're high. So he and I provided pricing that got his attention, and we're able to, really for me, I looked at it, my investment, in terms of a business longevity model. For me, I had to invest $8 million in all my rolling stock, or I was going to be out of business. I mean, I had to comply with the Air Resource Board, or I'd be fined every day, and so I had to buy 40 new trucks. And so for me, I looked at this project as a way to provide the investment necessary for me to continue in business. So I would say without high-speed rail, it wouldn't be. And secondly, so I was able to give a more competitive price than usual. Also, because of the volume and the sheer volume of a project like this, whether it's this CP Construction Package 1 or 2, 3, or 4, all of the ready-mix producers and even my competitors are very interested because of the volume. They're able to sell for a lower price because of the high volume, because they've got this other work. So they're able to blend it and be more competitive with the larger volumes. Most of my competitors are owned by cement companies, Swiss, German, Mexican cement companies. And so their business model is focused on moving cement, because the investment required in a cement plant's $500 million-ish.
Yeah.
And so they're moving cement, and as a result, their concrete prices are lower. They just they want the volume. So you're getting probably the most competitive pricing that you'd be able to get anywhere in the concrete industry out there.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Senator Wachowski has a question.
I'm sorry I got here at the middle or beginning, Mr. Morales, of your presentation. I'm looking at the slide on the business plan, and I've read a reasonable amount. We're fully funded for this project from San Jose to North Bakersfield. Is that through 2025? Is that?
Not to be too cute, Senator, I think the word is fundable, which is,
Oh, fundable. Okay.
yeah, which is distinct and different. So I was going to get into this in the next panel. I'm happy to answer your question now, though, quickly.
Next topic.
Yeah, I'll wait till next. I just sort of want to.
We'll address exactly that point, Senator.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, any questions from members? Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank Dr. Wright and Curtis Lovett from the area to come down here to talk to us. Wish you well with that engineering veterans group, doctor. Keep it up. We have a lot of returnees coming in, and they're all qualified to do a lot of good things for our state and country. So thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make one more point on this, that I think something very important for the committee to know. All of the construction we've done to date, virtually all of it is with federal money. And through the programs we've enacted, 94% of that money has gone to companies and people in California. So we're bringing federal money into the state and keeping it in the state. And I just wanted to make sure that you had that statistic.
Is that a reflection on the high, does the high percentage of your goal that you set?
That's absolutely an element of it, no question. Right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. We'll go on to the next panel, and it looks like Lou Thompson is going to join us from the peer review group, and we're going to start with Chairman Richard talking about funding and managing risk and financing issues that pertain to the high-speed rail. And so I'll turn it over to Dan Richard, and he can begin this segment. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I think, again, what I'd like to do is to make a few opening remarks, answer the Senator's question, and leave maximum time for interaction with the committee for your questions. But I'd just like to touch on a couple of things that I think are important. First of all, the program cost. When we were here last year, the estimated cost of the program was $68 billion. And I want to hasten to add that we measure our program costs somewhat differently than most programs, because that $68 billion is a fully inflated cost to construct over the life of the program. Most people would give you a number of it expressed in 2016 dollars. That number for us would probably be around $54 billion. So, but we use the bigger number to tell the people of the state what this is going to cost them over the life of building the project in a fully inflated way. This year, the program is not $68 billion. The program is $64 billion. And even that I need to qualify, because on an apples-to-apples basis, our 2016 business plan really was 10% below the prior business plan. It's really $62 billion. And we used some of those savings that we saw in the program to upscope what we're going to do between Los Angeles and Anaheim by about $2 billion to improve the frequency of service there. So on an apples-to-apples basis, we went from 68 to 62. We currently say the program is $64 billion because we've done some upscoping of the program. Now, why did the program go down in costs? This is something that people would be somewhat surprised to hear. I might also note that it might be somewhat contrary to some of the things you might read in, say, the newspaper. But the fact of the matter is that it really came about through a lot of value engineering and so forth. It seems to me that the evolution of these programs is somebody starts off and they say, okay, I want to know what this is going to cost. So they take out a magic marker and they draw lines on a map. They pull out some rules of thumb and they do this and they say, this is what it's going to cost. And you'll hear a lot of people say, and a lot of our critics will say, well, look, this program has skyrocketed in costs. The public was told it was going to be $33 or $43 billion, and now you guys are talking about 68 or 64 or whatever. Well, there's a couple of very important things here. First, as you get into the program and you start to see what it really costs, it's not just a magic marker line on a page, but to have to move the project because there's an essential food processing facility that's really important to the region. Or in the case of Kings County, we had to move the project around a rendering plant that handles 700 cow carcasses per day, but is essential to the dairy ecology in that area. And so then you're going through the city and somebody wants it undergrounded and somebody wants this. So suddenly you see the social costs of the program getting driven into the physical costs of the program. But the point I want to make to you in the legislature and to the public you represent is that, yes, from 10 years ago, the estimated cost of the program is higher as we've addressed those kinds of true costs of building it. But the construction costs are not running out of control. The construction costs are under control. The construction costs, if anything, have come in under our engineers' estimates. All three of our first construction packages have come in at numbers under the engineers' estimates. And furthermore, because we use something called design build, we allow the contracting teams to come in and bring their ideas of design to us. So one of the packages in the Central Valley came in $400 million below the engineer's estimate because they had a better idea, instead of building retaining walls, of doing sloping and grading. So we started to look at some of these techniques that the private sector was bringing and saying, you know, if we really start to look at these across the system, we can do value engineering to actually bring costs down. And we are continuing to do value engineering to bring costs down of the actual program construction. So my first point is, last year we had a $68 billion program. This year we're saying it's a $64 billion program, and that's really because we have a better understanding of what it really takes to build, and we're keeping those costs under control to the greatest extent possible. The second point that I want to make is to go to Senator Wachowski's question of, well, how are we paying for this? And I get asked this question all the time. And not to be, I don't want to be glib about this at all, because a lot of times I'll say, well, I don't know where all the money's coming from. People expect us to know where every dollar's coming from. You know, I was on the BART board 20 years ago sitting with Ron Gonzalez, and Mayor Gonzalez had the vision of extending BART to San Jose. In 2 weeks, they're going to open the Warm Springs station. They're still looking at putting all the funding together to get BART all the way to San Jose.
Plus, we're opening the Berryessa station.
I apologize for misstating.
Oh, the Warm Springs is opening right away, Bob, right? Bob, next 2
yeah,
weeks.
That's what I meant, yeah, March 24th.
Different district.
And
It's a different district, right. So, but my point is this, is that most of these infrastructure projects start without knowing where all the money's coming from. But I have a pretty good idea where a big chunk of the money's coming from. So let me walk you through that and directly answer your question, Senator. So if you look at the $64 billion, one of the important things about high-speed rail compared to regional rail, like BART or anybody else, is that high-speed rail systems around the world, once they're built, generate positive operating cash flows. And this is, and Mr. Thompson will either back me up on this or undercut what I say, but this was the question that we had when Governor Brown appointed me and Mike Rossi to the High-Speed Rail Authority Board, which is, will this work in California the way it's worked around the world? And our models have shown, and while these models cannot be completely precise, I think that directionally they have shown that our system should generate those positive cash flows once the capital's built. We estimate the value of those at between $12 and $20 billion on a net present value basis. Once the system is fully built out, you get to that larger number. Well, that's basically a third of the cost. The public was told in 2008 that this system should be built with 1/3 federal, 1/3 state, and 1/3 private sector money. Our business plan, our business model is that as we establish ridership and show a history of ridership, because we're not allowed to offer any kind of subsidy in the beginning, that as we show history of ridership, we will then auction the rights to operate on our system to the private sector. This is a model that's been used around the world. This is what was done in Japan, the people who built the world's first high-speed rail system. They started the Shinkansen in 1964 for the Olympics, and in the early 1980s, they privatized their system. So the private sector now operates on this infrastructure that the public sector started. So about a third of that money we see coming from there. Today, we have $3.5 billion of federal money from the Stimulus Act and additional funds. And we have the state bond money, which is roughly $9 billion under Proposition 1A. We have an indeterminate amount of cap and trade money. The cap and trade estimates for us were, as you know, the governor proposed, the legislature enacted legislation that allocates 25% of the cap and trade proceeds to us. We estimated that'd be roughly $500 million a year as our share. In the early years, it actually exceeded that. Recently, as all of you know, the auctions have had very disappointing results. We believe, and the experts we talk to believe, that that is virtually entirely attributable to some of the uncertainty around the legal status of the program post-2020. And that is a policy matter that you, as legislators, are addressing. Our hope is that that will be clarified. In our 2016 business plan, we identified that the first operating segment of the system should go from the Central Valley, the construction you've heard about, the 119 miles in the Central Valley, and it should connect to the Silicon Valley. And I know we disappointed some people in Southern California, and I do understand that, but as I said to leadership in both houses, if we looked at what then looked to be the projection of cap and trade dollars combined with our other sources of money, it equaled about $20 billion. It's roughly $20 billion to get from the Central Valley to the Silicon Valley. It's roughly $30 billion to get from the Central Valley to Los Angeles. Our decision was that the best thing that we could do for the program, both to harvest the private sector money and to begin delivering benefits, was to open the system as quickly as possible. So we made that decision, which, as I said, recognizing the demographics of the state, was not the politically correct decision, but it was the correct decision. And so, Senator, what we say by fundable is if cap and trade gets clarified and we continue to get what we had been getting, we see enough money in that pot to connect the Central Valley to Silicon Valley, open an economically self-sustaining leg of high-speed rail, one that does not require an operating subsidy. Use that then to vault into the phase where the private sector comes in, buys the right to operate on that, starts writing us checks, and we use that to help build out the system in further direction. And so that's why the chart said that we have the fundable amount. It's not all the dollars in hand, but we have a good chunk of those. Let me just anticipate the next question. If cap and trade is not clarified, we have to think about how we close that gap. And there are other things that we've not even begun to look at. In Japan, 1/3 of their revenues come from real estate development around their stations. There's going to be enormous real estate potential around our stations. We're now working with local communities to think about how all of us can share in that economic uplift. I can stop if the senator has a question. Okay. That's basically what I was going to say about the financing, except to make one other point. We have tried to be very careful, and of course, you have the benefit of an independent peer review group who has never hesitated to tell us when they disagree with us, and we've been benefited from that, but they've also, I think, looked hard at the program and what we're putting together. Of that $64 billion, $11 billion is project contingency. That's money that is there in case there are overruns or things that go sideways. And this is a point that I want to make that I think is very important, because I cannot tell you that you're not going to open the newspaper one day and see a story, whether it's an accurate story or not, that says, oh, wait, this contract over here looks like they want more money. That is not the whole picture of how this program is being managed and run. And this is something that I think is very important, that we need to do a better job explaining to the public. This is a big, complex, tough, unprecedented project. It faces risks every single day. Our job is to manage those risks. And I think the public understands that projects like this will have challenges. There'll be problems. What they look to us to do is to show how we're addressing those. And the best example I can give you is a day about 6 weeks ago, where I came to the High Speed Rail Authority and two things happened, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. In the afternoon, we had a briefing from our staff about cost pressures from third-party contracts, moving utility lines, PG&E, AT&T, dealing with the railroads that we're next to. The law requires us to hew as closely as we can to existing utility and transportation corridors. The railroads want intrusion barriers so that if one of their train derails, they're not liable for hitting a high-speed rail passenger train. Those are expensive. Frankly, those costs, which we can't really control, how much PG&E says is going to cost to move a line, or AT&T, those costs were running significantly higher than our estimates. And so we were sitting there and we were trying to figure out how we push back on that. In the morning, the High Speed Rail Authority meeting picked a preferred alignment for how our track is going to go through the Chowchilla area as it turns from the Central Valley towards Gilroy and San Jose. If we ultimately adopt that alignment, it's an alignment that is $200 million less than what was in our budget. So every day we're going to have things that are going to push the costs up, and we have to come back with things that push the cost down. Every day we're going to have things that threaten the schedule this way, and we're going to have to look at how we shorten the schedule. And my only frustration is that it tends to be the negative things that get reported when what we want to be working with you on is so that you can see the whole picture and you can hold us accountable for the whole picture of how we're managing risks and costs. But right now, today, the most difficult segment was really getting started on the first one. We got out of the blocks late on right-of-way, which meant that we knew we were going to suffer some delay damages, but we made a very good decision to go ahead anyway because it meant we could hold a contractor's bid that was hundreds of millions of dollars under the engineer's estimates that we weren't going to be able to hold on to after that. We have to make those decisions all the time, and we will be held accountable to you and to the public for those decisions. We just want to have the opportunity to talk about this in its totality and not having people cherry pick little pieces of it and say, oh, this is a problem, without looking at what we're doing about it. So our theme to you is this is an actively managed program. There will always be times we can do better, but that is our commitment to you and to the people that you represent. And I apologize for going on a little long, but it's really the essence of what this program has to be about.
We'll hold our questions until finish, so turn it over to Jeff Morales now again.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just be very quick and follow on a few points and really focus on the risk management and how we employ that on a practical basis. As the chairman noted, probably our single greatest responsibility from a project delivery perspective is managing the risks. And that starts with identifying the risks. And we have a very robust process of doing that. And identifying those risks, they can range from very broad general trends and things that are external factors to very specific risks associated with the topography we're going through or something we might encounter as a part of the construction. The next step then is to manage the risks. And again, we do that on a daily basis. And it's important to note our risk management process and our risk management staff is built right into our organization and is part of our delivery, but risk management reports directly to the board so that the board has unfiltered access to all of that information and all of the risks that are being identified and how we're managing them. How we manage them, it can vary. We have a lot of different mechanisms once we've identified the risks to manage them. We can do it through contractual terms, in some cases making sure we put the responsibility for managing a risk where it can be best managed. In some cases, that's us. In other cases, it's on our contractors to do it. Design decisions, other things. We have a variety of ways to manage them, but we're constantly looking at how to do that and make sure that we stay within our budgets. And Chairman Richard mentioned the contingency, and that 11 of the $64 billion budget in total is contingency. And that's a combination of allocated contingency, meaning contingency that we assign to very specific items and risk based on real information, and then unallocated contingency, which is general, just to cover unknowns and unanticipated items. We track and report all of that information, where we are in terms of identifying risks, managing them, where we are on our contingency, every month through extensive reporting to the board and in committee meetings that are available to the public. And we post all those reports every month, and it's about that thick in paper, but on our website, available to the public so that they can see what's happening. And I'll transition over to Mr. Thompson by saying another important element of that work is to work with the independent peer review group to get their insights, their input on how we're doing on that, and make sure that we are being as open and transparent as we can be.
Thank you. Lou Thompson, representing the California High-Speed Rail Peer Review Group. I'll turn it over to you, Lou.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear here today. Since the last hearing, we've sent you 2 letters which bear on the issue of funding and managing risk. Okay. And what I'd like to do, if I could, is summarize those 2 letters briefly. I will be brief because I know you've read them in detail and I don't have to worry about that. We wrote you a letter on the 24th of August, and what it discussed improved oversight for the project and the funding sources and the risks of the funding sources. As to oversight, we said that all projects need a baseline, and this project has not had one. But the 2016 business plan permitted the establishment of a baseline. This is where the goalposts are. When you're playing a game, you want to know they stay in the same place, and now they will. We summarize that data in our letter, and we will use those data later in the future to determine what changes have been made and what the reason for those are. We discussed dashboards. We've worked with the High-Speed Rail Authority to develop a set of dashboards. I know you've probably seen these. And we think they're going to be quite valuable for senior level review of the project. You don't need to be buried in the details. You need an oversight of how's it going. Briefly, what the latest dashboard tells you is that with respect to cost, budgets, that the first construction project is okay, not terrible, but I mean, not really good, but not bad either. The other 2, CP2 and 3 and 4, are actually, as of now, in good shape with respect to the budget. With respect to the spending rate, which is a version of the schedule, all 3 are in some trouble. CP1 and CP4 are in red status, CP2, 3 is in a yellow status, which means they are not ahead of their schedules or they're behind their schedules. With respect to right-of-way acquisition, CP1 is in the yellow status, CPs 2, 3, and 4 are in a green status. And with respect to the ARA burn rate, that is the spending of the stimulus money, they are in green status. So I think that at this level, this is very useful information to have, and it helps to point you to what should you be worried about, where should you be asking your questions. All of these are posted on our website, and I'm sure on yours as well, and we will have the series. I think the more of them we have, the more valuable they will be because they'll give us a sense of trends as well as just a snapshot. As to enhanced oversight of the project, we recommended that there be a separate designated unit adequately funded with continuity to oversee the project, and that hasn't happened. And I think it would be a good idea if it could, because I think the depth of information and the importance of this project to California, both in terms of its benefits and its costs, justifies something more than just a group of essentially elderly men without a secretary reporting to you. You really need expertise and continuity to report to you to tell you how the project is going. With respect to the funding sources, we went through these, and I'll go through them briefly. The federal money appears to be, as it is now, appears to be available, and you will spend the ARA money. Proposition 1A money, you understand better than I do, but it's still under litigation, and the release of that money could still be a problem. With respect to cap and trade, this is an exceptionally volatile situation. It is volatile partly because of litigation, partly because of the authority of the program to exist, and partly because the market itself isn't proven and it fluctuates. So the $10.5 billion in cap and trade money is money that we really, it could be not anything, but it could be significantly different from $10.5 billion. Future potential sources that were identified were $2.9 billion in an unidentified federal grant. I can't assess the probability of a federal government finding that kind of money in the next 4 to 8 years, but it could be a problem. And then the net cash flow, I should say I completely agree with Chairman Richard that the high-speed road project should operate without a subsidy. I just don't think that's going to be a problem. The question is, how much net cash flow will it generate over the years? And that is a matter of assumptions, and the net result could be widely different range around what they've estimated. With all of these taken into account, there is still a gap of about $15 billion that hasn't been identified, and there will be a maximum financing requirement of around $36 billion because you have to build it before you can sell it, in effect. So those two things still need to be dealt with. In the February 7th letter, which we sent you, we discussed the subdivision D funding plans, which have been acted on now, and the acquisition of an early operator. On the subdivision D funding plans, we think they are complete and generally okay. But we now face uncertainty with respect to the Peninsula plan because of the suspension of the FTA grant of $647 million to Caltrain. And there is an issue of how to define the subsidy in the financial forecasts that the PFAL, or the Project Finance Advisory Limited Consultant, has discussed. We note that the Department of Finance has approved the Central Valley part, but they have also suspended Peninsula because of that same issue. As to the acquisition of an early operator, the peer review group has long and strong supported the incorporation of early operating expertise since the beginning of the project, and we are very glad that it is now happening. Exactly how to do it is complicated. Franchising and concessioning are really, really sophisticated issues, but there's a lot of world experience. There is no perfect approach, but we think what HSRA is doing is credible. It's a good place to start. But since private investment, we're now talking about 1/3 of the cost of the project being raised that way, we think the legislature should follow this process very carefully, especially in the way subsidy is defined and in setting the public policies that will lead to services and fares regulation. There's a trade-off between financial profitability and service to the public, and we think the legislature should be aware of those trade-offs and have whatever input they wish to make. Pulling this all together, I have 4 points I'd like to raise with you. First, using the dashboards, I think, will be positive, and I urge you to do this. Second, we have recommended, and we continue to recommend, that the legislature commission an independent study of cap and trade potential revenues, potential risk, potential variation, so that all of the parties who want to depend on this are singing from the same piece of music. So that you have, there is no good estimate, that's clear. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, but it would be nice if it were all in one place and everyone had to understand and live within those rules. We would urge you to clarify the definition of subsidy in order to avoid future legal haggling over what does it mean and whether they're operating without a subsidy. There was a recent study done by the authority on looking at the financial forecasting and on subsidies, and it defines what a subsidy is, what the operating costs, what the revenues are. If possible, if the legislature could take cognizance of this definition or clarify the definition in legislation in order to avoid a future argument, I think it would be a good idea. Finally, if you could somehow communicate to the U.S. Department of Transportation and to the Congress the importance and the independence of Caltrain electrification, that would be good. The attacks on Caltrain electrification create uncertainty for high-speed rail, but they create, a near-death event for Caltrain. And yet there's very little connection between those two projects, except that ultimately a good investment will turn out to be an even better investment. And getting this point across, I think, would make a lot of difference. So this covers what I'd like to discuss. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Okay, we're going to have some questions. I'm going to raise the one that I'm immediately concerned about right now. And what is the current status of the Caltrain funding with the federal government? And what do we need to do to make sure that project is built on schedule and on budget? And are we having slippage on that project? Because every time the project is delayed, it costs money. So I'm speaking as an original board member of Caltrain. We were one of the founders of Caltrain. I was on the board. I chaired the right-of-way committee that purchased the right-of-way of Caltrain. We packaged the proposition funds and the local funds to buy the right-of-way, finish the construction of the infrastructure, buy the trains, continue the master planning and building project. We made the investments. We passed our local bond election last year, funding a half-cent sales tax with the federal commitment that they would pay for their share. We're paying for a greater share in the local government funding than the federal government's paying. Now, all of a sudden, we get the rug pulled out from under us, and we're looking at higher costs. So I want to know what the current status is, because my county's taxpayers have put their necks out in Santa Clara County, as well as San Mateo and San Francisco County. We're worried about the loss of our tens of millions of dollars of local half-cent sales tax.
Mr. Chairman, I'll start. Mr. Morales and I have both been involved in extensive discussions on this. In fact, as early as about 2 hours ago, or recently as 2 hours ago. Let me just say at the outset, this was an unjustified and really outrageous action to hold back on federal money for Caltrain. And it was stimulated by a letter from some 14 members of the California delegation in the majority side, based on a false premise that somehow high-speed rail, if they have issues with high-speed rail, I acknowledge that, that's fine, but that somehow stopping a grant that came from an entirely different part of the Department of Transportation. We're funded through the Federal Railroad Administration. Caltrain's grant of $647 million was for capacity expansion, having nothing to do with high-speed rail, and it's funded by the Federal Transit Administration. And that grant is
Working on it for 15 years.
working on it for 15 years. When the High-Speed Rail Authority, under our combined leadership and with the recommendation of the peer review group as well as Peninsula congressional, senatorial, and assembly members, urged high-speed rail to look at abandoning a separate set of tracks up the peninsula and sharing track with Caltrain, the so-called blended approach. We committed $600 million of Prop 1A bond money and an additional $113 million of allocated cap and trade money to that project. And so that is the high-speed rail connection. It helps them reduce their cost, us reduce our costs. But as you said, and as Mr. Thompson said, their project operates for the purpose of electrifying a highly valuable, highly utilized service in the peninsula that's essential for Silicon Valley. And so I think this, so I first want to say it is absolutely, there is no policy justification for the federal government withholding that money. The second thing I want to say is that as we speak today, the leadership from Caltrain and the MTC are in Washington, and they're making the argument to anybody who will listen to it. I think that there are two things that are very important here, and Mr. Chairman, one of them is going to be troubling. The new president is about to issue his first budgetary expression this Thursday. It is possible that beyond this particular action, which, as I said, was unjustified, we need to see if the administration is going to support the overall program in that area. And that could be a threat regardless. Secondly, I know, although high-speed rail is not the lead, and in fact, I think somebody aimed at us and shot the hostage, quite frankly. We're not the lead on this, but we're aware of what's happening. Secretary Kelly is deeply engaged in this as well. As you know, Governor Brown wrote a letter directly to Secretary Chow on the Caltrain issue, asking if he could discuss this with her in person. So the governor is behind it. There's bipartisan support for it. I actually think it was kind of a mistake on the part of the authors of the letter. I think they were assuming that the Caltrain grant was somehow part of our program. It's not. So I think the status of it is twofold.
I read the letter.
Yeah.
Didn't bear any relationship to reality.
I would agree with that. And so what we're hoping is that, look, there may be legitimate concerns that the authors of the letter had with wanting to make sure that federal dollars are not flowing through us to Caltrain. We can satisfy those concerns if we have the opportunity to. And so I think what we'd like to do is be part of the solution to help engage with those members to kind of answer any legitimate issues they have, but to really try to move this program forward quickly. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, the Caltrain has already suffered $20 million in excess cost by holding their contracts open till.
That's just the minor top of it. It's going to be much more.
Right.
It's going to cost us a lot of money by the time this hot air finishes.
Well, I wish I had a better answer for you, except to say this is something that the governor's focused on, the Secretary of Transportation's focused on, the Bay Area leadership is focused on. We're all trying to engage with people in Washington to resolve this as quickly as possible. But it's not about high-speed rail. And they're kind of the innocent bystanders.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that because, I don't know, I guess I'm a little upset about it. You can tell, right? But I think it's very unfair when we go to the voters in all three counties and place something on the ballot after the federal government made commitments at full funding grant agreement. That's what it was, right? And we made these commitments based on their signed letter agreeing to fund it, and then all of a sudden they hold it back. And I think, you know, it'll send ripples through the transportation finance for all other projects in the country if we can't honor full funding grant agreements in terms of financing transportation. I think it has a bigger impact the bonding and financing of transportation depended on federal grants, if that's the kind of thing that happens a lot. And I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well,
You know how to finance, you know how you finance projects with the federal funds, with the full funding grant agreements, and it's a commitment from the federal government to finance things, and then after they make that commitment, you go out and you sell a bond to construct the project per the schedule, and then having the rug pulled out from under you, it's going to make the bonds worthless or very expensive at the least, I would think.
And
More
Mr. Morales
interest
said
is a higher risk. You're going to have a higher risk. You're going to have a riskier proposition if the federal government's going to be doing these kinds of things.
Yeah.
We were in Washington last week as well, talking to DOT and members of the delegation and others, but I was also at the opening of the American Public Transit Association meetings, and I can, on your point there, I can tell you this has sent shockwaves throughout all transit operators, because as was the case here, you spend years developing a plan, going through the process, and in this case, having it actually signed off on by the DOT. All that needed was a signature at this point, and there was a mandatory waiting period to get the signature, but the review was completed. They had passed all the hurdles, satisfied all the requirements of the law, and there's a grave concern among communities around the country about what this could signal if this stands, what it could mean in terms of pulling, as you said, pulling the rug out from under projects all over the country.
Well, thank you for giving me any kind of clarification. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks on the.
One other important point on this is that it's important to note that, and Mr. Thompson alluded to this, he called this the D plan, just for members of the committee. Under the Bond Act, under 17 whatever subsection D, after the legislative appropriation, before we get access to the bonds, we have to go through certain steps. The last of those steps was to go to the Director of Finance, show that there was financial sufficiency. Right. We took 2 D plans to the Director of Finance, one for the Central Valley, which he was able to sign off on. And I was happy to hear that Mr. Thompson agreed with the assessment that there's financial sufficiency for that. The other was for our share of the bond money contribution to the Caltrain corridor, which he could not sign off on because of this federal, but he did indicate that he is prepared to move forward expeditiously. So I would say, members of this body, raising your voice to your counterparts in our congressional delegation, I think would be important. We're ready to go.
Well, both the Assembly and Senate chairs of the Transportation Committee have sent a letter to our congressional delegation and the administration in Washington asking that the final agreement be concluded, and so we can put the project out to bid and cause no more delay. This project, we're going to be losing tens of millions of dollars every month this project is delayed. This is a $10 million a month delay cost that's going to be absorbed, probably all but the local. I don't know the federal government ever absorbs any cost increases. Do you? It's always the local local funding that absorbs the delay cost, and that's kind of, I think, the real rub with the locals in my community. That money will not be able to be spent on other projects due to this action of the federal government in delaying this project. So we will not have money for other projects and other things we want to do.
And as you know, Mr. Chairman, we're a tax donor state, and in this case, the local money that you raised, along with our money and the federal money, was going to fund the production of rail cars in Utah and Florida and across the United States. So lots of people get hurt.
I think Senator Skinner had a question, and others.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman, for holding this, and thank you, Dan, Mr. Morales, and Mr. Thompson for joining us. Mr. Richard, you brought up the issue of potentially being able to, and I'm not sure exactly how you worded it, but if our high-speed rail project is successful and we have, and there's economic development as a result near the stations, that we might be able to benefit from that in terms of the long-term funding viability, economic viability of high-speed rail. I raise it because, as you know from being on the BART board, BART had the opportunity potentially to have established something like, I think they're called like financing districts around BART stations so that BART might have benefited from a portion of the value of the property as it went up, partly due, of course, to the result of BART's presence. And that wasn't established. And so now, if we were to establish it, we have to go back and get the commercial property owners' permission. And of course, usually that might happen, but most people don't like to voluntarily sign up to lose some money. So is it already anticipated that you would structure it in from the start to accomplish this?
That's related to also the infrastructure financing districts.
That's right.
Around transit stations. We had our legislation on that a few years ago.
Well, even though I'm a member of the Brown administration, I could also point out, Senator, that BART was a 50% owner of a redevelopment authority around the Pleasant Hill BART station and was able to harvest the development around that. But I was talking with the chairman before the hearing began. There's a broader question here, and that is making sure that the public investment in this massive project reap the benefits of what this could mean in the urban areas that we serve. And from the very beginning, I expressed to the governor that I thought that if we did not focus on the transit land use interaction, that we were missing an enormous opportunity. We've now I created a transit land use committee of the High-Speed Rail Authority. I named myself as chair after we lost an excellent former member, Catherine Perez-Estelano, whom you may know, because there are two things about this that I think are important. One is sustainability, making sure that we have the right kind of density and connectivity around the stations. And then the second is enterprise value. So what we are doing right now is looking at all of the different tools. Our view is that we would come back to the legislature, either later in this session, probably to begin the conversation, or next year, to look at the question of whether the enhanced infrastructure financing districts are sufficient, or whether we need some type of RDA follow-on, or whether we need some other type of tax increment tools. I know enough to know that I want these things. I'm not the expert in what they should be, but we are bringing in people. We meet every month, and we're trying to now construct a vision of what it would take to realize these benefits. And I believe that in the end, it will require us to ask the legislature for certain types of authority. We absolutely should be discussing this with you. We're just at the point where we're starting down that road. One last thing. I'm proud to say we have been funding a lot of planning grants in Fresno, in other areas up and down the system. And in San Jose, I was just about to get there, saving the best for last, Mr. Chairman. And but a lot of these places were starved for resources after the economic downturn. We've been providing funding for planners. We are to get ahead of the issue you raised, Senator. We're working with people in Fresno. I've been in meetings as recently as 2 weeks ago in San Jose around the Diridon Station, which is going to be an amazing development there, so that we can get in now and start talking about what kind of developments need to be there and what do we need to do so that the cities, the regions, and the authority can all benefit from this. And, you know, Mr. Chairman, you also asked about affordable housing. I mean, we're looking at a mixed use. I know that to my right, Senator Atkins has been a longtime leading advocate of more affordable housing in California. So what we envision is really effective mixed-use developments that run across the spectrum, from commercial developments to opportunities for affordable housing, livable communities. And I don't mean to go on and on with this, but one of the most intriguing things I ever heard was, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, saw the development of Metro. The buildup around the Metro stations in Washington has been so enormous. And in Virginia, 2 counties took 2 different approaches. Fairfax County said, we don't want it in our cities, go down the median strip of the highway. What they've got there are a bunch of parking garages. Arlington County said, we want the development in our cities. We're going to tear up our cities for a couple of years till it's done. The consequence of that has been they've had so much economic uplift from that they've been able to lower property tax values for the rest of the county because of what they've gotten around the transit stations. So we think that there's a very strong argument economically why we should really maximize the benefit of this investment. I apologize for the long answer, but this is actually something I'm pretty passionate about as an opportunity that high-speed rail provides us.
Well, I think a lot of us are. I know just about all the legislators that I've talked about this subject are very supportive, and perhaps this committee, if we would like to talk about the transit land use interface and financing options, we can put that in a separate, we should have a separate hearing on it. I don't know if other senators agree with that, but that would be something I would propose, not just on the high-speed rail, but on any transit project that we can encourage this interface so we can maximize our economic investment. But also, it relates to ridership too. I mean, we're talking like if we can have good land use around transit stations, we can develop an increase in ridership and make I guess you're going for that public-private partnership, according to what I heard. It makes it, if you have a good, solid plan to go ahead and do that, and the blessings of the cities and the state government, it seems to me that would be an enhancement of your value that you would get out of that public-private partnership. Am I right?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
You would have a better value that you can present to somebody that's willing to invest.
That's right. And we get ridership, and we deliver ridership. And just the contrary example, on BART, we spent $1.5 billion building BART to the San Francisco airport with 4 stops. The leaders in South San Francisco decided it would be a good idea to put a Costco across the street from the BART station. I would submit to you that I doubt that they've had anybody take BART to the Costco. So this really is about intelligent land use planning to maximize both sustainability but also the value of the system.
On the other hand, Millbrae puts high-density housing, and it's doing quite well. So there's another city that put high-density, next to the BART station there, and it's doing quite well, with affordable housing in addition. Lou, you had a comment on this.
Yes, I wanted to emphasize the importance that this also has for the early operator that they're bringing in.
That's what I was talking about.
The value of the early operator's involvement will be to guide them in all of the issues associated not only with operating the railway, but the assets that the railway brings value to. But I also think I wanted to underline why it's important that you be involved, because the decisions that they will make and the way they relate to their operator, and especially the way they regulate the operations of their regulator, will bear on the public value that's generated by the project. And that's not a decision that is only made by an authority. It's a decision that the legislature itself should be aware of and know what the trade-offs are and what voice the legislature wants to have in that.
Okay. I had just one question. I'll let others. I had one question. That's the shaky leg of financing that you have from the federal government on your stool. And how much money are you depending from the federal government in the business plan? And we have some that was committed a while ago and you're spending, and you're continuing to spend. How much additional federal money are we depending upon in the business plan? And in terms of the first phase and so forth and so on?
Right, the short answer is none. Right now, we have a total of, in round numbers, $3.5 billion of federal money, $2.5 that came through the ARA, the stimulus.
It was like a commitment 5 years ago or whatever.
Right, and then another $900+ million that came in federal fiscal year 10. Our plan, our business plan is based on using those existing funds coupled with the 1A funds and coupled with cap and trade dollars. We are not depending on any additional federal dollars in order to get into operation and to make the targeted investments in Southern California that we've committed to.
Okay.
Obviously, should there become federal funds available, we would look to participate, but we're not depending on any of them right now.
You're going to seek federal funds, correct?
Certainly. And
depending on what kind of program they have. I don't.
Right.
We'll find out. Now, you said in a couple of days they're going to.
Well, I don't think they'll hit that issue in a couple of days, but and Mr. Thompson made reference to this, so sometimes people talk about, well, we're ending at Poplar Avenue in the Kings County, Kern County line because that's as far south as we were going to go before we decided to turn around and go the other way. What we said in our business plan was that just connecting the Central Valley to Silicon Valley with the money we have and the money we hope to have from cap and trade without any more federal dollars would allow us to build a self-sustaining first operating segment. If we had an additional $2.9 billion to connect into Bakersfield and to enhance the connection from San Jose to San Francisco, that would generate $4.7 billion of additional ridership revenue translated into additional private sector investment. So what we said was, while we're not planning to have additional federal dollars, we could make a very good business case to the federal government. Now, actually, the new president is talking about fast trains and talking about trillion-dollar infrastructure programs. We've started to have the first conversations back there. We're not shovel-ready, we're shoveling, and we have the possibility of extending our project, and we are a public-private partnership, so we're checking all the boxes that the new administration says they're interested in. I can't predict what that will mean, but, you know, stranger things have happened.
Well, I just hope that the cost overrun on the delay of the Caltrain project doesn't stop us from funding the high-speed rail to Bakersfield. That would be a very interesting situation, that the cost overrun for what they're causing by writing letters to the Department of Transportation caused the project not to be able to be extended to the Bakersfield downtown, and that might be something the members of Congress should look at before they write such letters, maybe. Okay, Senator Bates, you have questions, and
Yeah, a quick question. I'm not sure if you gentlemen actually saw the history in the Register, Orange County Register this weekend. And if you haven't, I'd like you to get a copy of this. But it says, and it goes to, and thank you, Mr. Thompson, for bringing up the issue of subsidy. When you read it, you assume there would have to be subsidy, you know what I'm trying to say. And it says 203 years of passengers paying $86 for a ticket to break even with the current $64 billion cost estimate. That's what would be required. So it'd be 200 years, 10,000 passengers per day at $86 a day. Not sure exactly where these numbers, but don't answer it now. But I think it's really important when information comes out like this that we as legislators get a better idea. And I really appreciate the fact that you have mentioned we need to define subsidy, because that is going to be a big issue in terms of the final operation. But if you read this and look at what they're predicting, you can't get by without a subsidy or the train doesn't run. It's not going to be like the airlines that take a few planes off service when they're not filling them. But if those cars aren't filled, this thing is not going to have money just to meet whatever the capital investment is, not including maintenance. So just take a look and then be prepared to respond, if you will, going forward, because I think it's important for the Oversight Committee to start to give us a more balanced view, because everybody's got their view. And I'm not a big fan of high-speed rail, but certainly initially in the concept, I said, wow, this is great. And it's had its, it's had its problems all along the way, and they're not getting better, especially when we see articles like this. You have the issue with the Caltrain and all of that. So I just ask if you will kind of take a look at that. You may want to talk to the editorial board, because this doesn't make me any confidence at all that you're going to get where you need to go and be able to avoid that bullet. Not the bullet train, but the bullet on subsidy. Huge.
I'll give you just a summary answer to that based on my experience with the high-speed rail systems around the world. I am confident that there will be no subsidy if it is defined the way it is defined in their recent studies, which is that, and well, that's my concern. Revenues will cover the operating cost and maintenance. I'm confident of that. That experience is true for most high-speed railways. Now, not necessarily commuter railways and not necessarily ordinary railways, but high-speed railways, I believe it is. But it's important to say that I don't know of maybe one example where the project was financially profitable in the sense the revenues covered all the investment costs and all the financing costs and other things. That's a different issue, and we need to distinguish those. And the reason for that is simple. There are public benefits as well as private benefits being generated here, and the public in these countries was willing to pay for its share of the benefits, and that should also be true here. You wouldn't expect this to be financially profitable. If it were, somebody would have done it. But the other benefits that we generate in terms of congestion, in terms of safety, in terms of pollution, in terms of development, and a lot of other things, those are things for which there's legitimate public reason to be involved in at least the capital investment. So you can look at projects and you can say it's not profitable, but there's a lot of different meanings of that word, and rather than have litigation later that causes the same problems that we've had on every other issue, it would be awfully nice if the legislature could say, we believe that subsidy means the following.
Well, you do have bond debt, and having served on the Transportation Corridor Agency for many years, and being close to default at times and having to go back to the markets to get a new bond rating and get refinancing, those are things, those are hills that you still have to climb. And when you have reports like this and you're sharing with me that the revenues are going to be able to reduce the debt on the bond shorter than 200 years, I have to question that. And I think, that would be refinancing. We started on the toll roads back in 1991 too. And we thought we'd have them all paid off in 2010. And it's during my term in there, we've refinanced many times. And basically, it's now profitable because obviously we have more development, more people, taking the toll road to get where they need to go more quickly. That's what the concept here is also. So I'm just asking you to take a look at that, because I don't want to have a definition of subsidy so that it meets, what you're trying to explain. Subsidy is subsidy in the minds of the folks out there that are going to be behind this, and when you go to get that money in the markets, you get grilled, having been through that many times. So I'm just saying, we need to know, and we need to all be on the same page and agree to something.
You make sure we get that information for the committee.
I will. I'll be happy to do it. And I would only point out at this point that the Bond Act requires us to not have an operating subsidy. And I think that a lot of these kinds of reports that this is referring to often denominated in terms of, can you pay back the capital cost? And that was never the concept here. But we will give you a more fulsome answer, and this is part of the debate. But basically, we were told you cannot have an operating subsidy, and we really do not believe we will have an operating subsidy at all. In fact, quite the contrary. But Senator, we will give you a very full and prompt reply.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from other members? Okay, thank you very much. We'll go on to the next panel. We have one last panel, regional investments. Liria Lorano is the Deputy Chief Officer of Caltrain Modernization, and Roderick Diaz, He's the planning development manager from Metrolink, so we're going to hear from the Northern California, Southern California, and then public comment. After we hear the public, we're going to reopen the hearing to hear SCA 2. So why don't you start? Go ahead, yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ariel Lorano. I'm the Deputy Chief Officer of the Caltrain Modernization Project. I want to start by apologizing that our Executive Director, Jim Hartnett, isn't here today. He would have liked to be here. As you heard earlier, he's still in D.C., working very hard to get the remaining funds we need to move on with the project.
Tell him not to come back until he does.
That's the plan. Caltrain is an aging commuter rail system struggling to accommodate unprecedented regional growth. 2016 marked our 6th consecutive year of record-setting ridership. As highways 101 and 280 have become more and more congested, employers have turned to Caltrain as their preferred commute option between San Francisco and Silicon Valley. As a result, our peak hour service is well over 100% capacity, with many riders standing during the commute. The Caltrain corridor is arguably the most economically productive area in the state. The communities served by our 51-mile railroad are responsible for 14% of the state's GDP, 20% of California tax revenue, and are the birthplaces of over half of California patents. However, the region cannot continue to thrive without equipping this 150-year-old commuter rail system with a modernized system capable of accommodating current and future ridership demand. Since 1999, Caltrain has been working towards the electrification of the corridor. The Peninsula Corridor Electrification Project will transform the current diesel operations to a system that features high-performance electric commuter trains capable of delivering cleaner, faster, more frequent service to Peninsula communities. When complete, electrification of Caltrain will increase the capacity of the current system, and as a result will reduce vehicle miles traveled by 619,000 miles every day. The system's greenhouse gas emissions will be dramatically reduced, eliminating over 176,000 tons of carbon dioxide. The project will create over $2.5 billion in economic value and help create almost 10,000 new jobs throughout the country. For example, the project is the driving force for the creation of a new railcar production facility in Salt Lake City that would employ 550 workers in Utah. Currently, Caltrain has secured all local, regional, and state funds for the project. The one funding source that remains is the FTA core capacity funding. Caltrain has requested $647 million in core capacity funds, which equates to 32% of the total project budget of $1.98 billion. Caltrain has been working with FTA since 2009 to ensure that the project meets all of the rigorous industry and regulatory requirements of the core capacity competitive discretionary program. Project was rated highly after thorough evaluation, including ridership studies, design assessments, financial analyses, and cost-benefit evaluations by the FTA and the U.S. Department of Transportation. Caltrain, as the project sponsor, also has significant local financial support for this project, demonstrated by the project's substantial leveraging of local, state, and regional funds. In September 2016, Caltrain awarded contracts to Balfour Beatty for construction of the corridor's electrification infrastructure and to Stadler U.S. Incorporated for the manufacture and delivery of the high-performance electric commuter trains. The contractors have advanced the project's design and were scheduled to begin construction on March 1st of this year. On February 17, the FTA announced that execution of the core capacity grant would be delayed until the President makes decisions about the availability of funds in the administration's upcoming budget proposal in Congress, which is expected in the May timeframe. On February 27, Caltrain negotiated an extension of the March 1 deadline for contractors to begin construction. Extending the deadline does not come without cost implications. Buying additional time from the contractors will likely require utilization of up to $20 million in project contingency that otherwise would have been available for construction-related expenses in the future. If the funding agreement is executed sooner, the potential need to utilize contingency will be reduced. As you heard earlier, Caltrain is working with our strong partners in D.C. and across the country to ensure that our project receives the federal funds. Every project that has achieved these milestones that this project has received an executed full funding agreement, and we're very hopeful that this project will not be any different. Thank you for this opportunity to give you an update.
Thank you. Roderick?
Yes, good afternoon. Once again, I'm Roderick Diaz, the Director of Planning and Development of the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, otherwise known as Metrolink. Pleased to report today on the progress that Metrolink has been able to achieve with our partners at the State of California and the California High-Speed Rail Authority. First, I'll start by elaborating on 3 initiatives that have significant progress. First, we just completed implementation of a system-wide positive train control system, otherwise known as PTC. PTC technology is a GPS-based safety technology that can stop a train and prevent train-to-train collisions, overspeed derailments, and other unauthorized train movement. Being one of the first is an achievement we are particularly proud of as it continues our leadership in rail safety following on previous investments in vehicles with crash energy management. The California High-Speed Rail Bond, Proposition 1A, provided a critical grant in the amount of $35 million to support our PTC implementation efforts. Second, Proposition 1A monies provided an additional $88.7 million for our high-speed rail readiness program. $68.5 million of this amount is being used to support the order for our first 20 of our F-125 locomotives being produced by EMD Progress Rail in Indiana. These locomotives will help us retire locomotives which do not even meet the EPA Tier 0 standard and replace them with ones that meet the highest standard, Tier 4, the cleanest, most efficient standard in the industry, providing an 85% reduction in emissions of particulate matter and oxides of nitrogen. These locomotives also have a 64% higher horsepower than our existing locomotives, enabling us to carry longer trains across sections of our network with steep inclines, allowing us to be ready to support ridership from the high-speed rail program. We received the first of these locomotives in June of this last year and received 5 so far on our property, and we anticipate the first of these coming into revenue service by this summer. We are also thankful that we've been able to follow that on with that order of 20 with another order of 19, which is supported by a grant of $41 million from the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. With these locomotives, over 75% of our fleet will be these cleaner, more powerful locomotives.
When are you going to receive them?
We've received 5 so far, and so over the next few years, we're receiving through the middle of 2018 will be 2018.
Get them all.
We'll have them all.
Then that'll be a third, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. The third initiative that I'd like to highlight is our participation with the State of California through the California State Transportation Agency in the development of the 2018 statewide rail plan. We've been a key stakeholder of this plan as it has been developed. The plan is advancing key principles of integration and connectivity across such dimensions as schedules and fare systems. We, as a regional rail operator, view ourselves as a critical component of a multi-layered rail system where we serve as a critical link between high-speed rail services and express intercity services on one end and urban mass transit systems and integrated bus services on the other. The state rail plan, as we see it, is articulating goals for service which can help clarify where investments can best be deployed. There are many needs that rail and network operators such as ourselves have in supporting state of good repair, capacity, and safety, particularly at highway rail grade crossings. These three initiatives highlight our active coordination with the state and contributes to our work directly with the California High-Speed Rail Authority moving forward. Metrolink and many of our Southern California rail partners in rail development has developed a strong partnership with the High-Speed Rail Authority over the last several years. This partnership is formalized in what's called the Southern California Memorandum of Understanding, executed by the High-Speed Rail Authority, Metrolink, Metro, the City of Anaheim, the Riverside County Transportation Commission, the San Diego Association of Governments, and the Southern California Association of Governments. With this MOU, we have identified a prioritized list of projects that are on the Phase 1 high-speed rail corridor and on feeder rail corridors. Recently, this partnership has progressed when the Metro Board of Directors in October of 2015 approved the accommodation of high-speed rail in what's called the Link Union Station, Link Us project. It's what's formerly known as the run-through tracks or the Southern California Regional Interconnector Project at Los Angeles Union Station. The High-Speed Rail Authority Board in February of last year approved execution of an initial contract with Metro to contribute to project development costs for the integration of high-speed rail at Los Angeles Union Station. The early completion of the Link US project at Los Angeles Union Station is a vital transportation project for the Southern California region, improving commuter, Metrolink, and intercity, the Low Sand Corridor rail service, allowing for future integration of high-speed rail. We continue to coordinate with High-Speed Rail Authority as they endeavor to complete their project-level environmental reviews, the EIRs, for the corridors along the Phase 1 high-speed rail system. Of particular importance to us are the corridors between Palmdale and Burbank to Anaheim via Los Angeles Union Station. These segments parallel key trunk lines of our own system and have the potential to bring investments to improve the performance of our existing service while also providing integration with the statewide high-speed rail system. As indicated in our comment letter from our Southern California partners to the 2016 High-Speed Rail Business Plan, we understand that the High-Speed Rail Authority intends to construct the initial operating segment between the Central Valley and San Jose by 2025. We continue to urge the High-Speed Rail Authority to articulate ways to facilitate connections both to and within Southern California. The business plan does propose to invest, together with authority partners, up to $4 billion on a range of improvements in the Burbank to Anaheim corridor. This significant investment could provide significant new additional capacity, grade crossing safety, major terminal improvements. We continue to seek clarification regarding the total High-Speed Rail Authority investment in Southern California for both the Burbank to Los Angeles to Anaheim corridors and for the broader Southern California MOU set of projects, specifically in regard to time frame, geographic location, and what will be invested in by the authority and by the state. On a more technical level, we continue to work with our partners at the authority to define what blended high-speed rail and regional rail operations will look like. As you heard with Ms. Lorano's discussion, blended service involves the joint operation of high-speed rail trains along electrified tracks that are shared with regional rail services. Since in Southern California we have multiple operating partners, including Metrolink, Amtrak, even freight operations with the Union Pacific and Burlington Northern Santa Fe, between Burbank and Anaheim, we have much work to do to define a concept of operations and maintenance for all of these operators and to articulate how this concept will guide the design of railroad corridor infrastructure and signaling. We believe that these agreements are essential precursors to completion of the corridor-level rail EIRs. Another cooperative work initiative involves station area planning. The authority has worked with many of our corridor station cities, including Palmdale, Burbank, Los Angeles, and Anaheim, on station area planning, enhancing multimodal connectivity and promotion of economic development. I close by reiterating our keen interest in advancing the promise of an integrated rail system throughout the state of California. We believe that Metrolink can play a key role in evolving that rail system in Southern California, and our coordination with the High-Speed Rail Authority can be a catalyst for the required investments for that integrated network. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Wachowski. Senator Roth. Yeah.
On Caltrans, I represent Santa Clara. I guess that's the only, in parts of San Jose, but not, that's where Caltrans station are, and I rode on it. What are your plans for the grade separations? That's been a 100-year problem, I guess. I'll phrase it that way.
So well, there are efforts from the city to work on a toolkit to help other cities develop what the plans that they need for the grade separations. As you know, we have 42 grade separations altogether. And the sponsors for the grade separations are really the cities that go forward. We're there to help them throughout the process and implement the design and construction as we're doing now for the 25th Avenue grade separation in San Mateo. But what we do is we play a support role because ultimately we look to the cities to sponsor that effort.
And how many grade separations are in the works right now in Caltrans?
So we have the 25th Avenue grade separation in San Mateo, which is in the final design phase, actually is out for bid. Broadway Burlingame just selected their preferred alternative, and it just got funded to go into the 35% design. I believe in Mountain View, Castro, they've been talking about, I think closing Castro is one of the options. I think Mountain View's selected, and then building a pedestrian underpass that goes across Central Expressway. I know other cities are talking about looking at preferred alternatives. The city of Menlo Park has selected one. South San Francisco and San Bruno are joining forces to work on 2 grade separations in their cities.
So how do those projects line up with the 2025 christening of the high-speed rail or the opening of the segment to San Jose? I mean, because I see that the high-speed rail will go from San Jose to Bakersfield, but then obviously at Diridon you could get on the Caltrain, right?
Yeah, so I want to make...
I'm trying to figure out the timing. What would it take me if I'm in 4th Street, 4th and Townsend in San Francisco, and you had the grade separations, how much time would I save? Because sometimes you don't stop at all the stations on the express train. That's express.
Yeah, from an operating standpoint, right? So the grade crossings don't slow down the operations of the train, right? So because the gates come down, the trains just keep going. It's more of a it's a city traffic issue, right? So it's a safety issue, it's a traffic issue, but it's not an operating issue.
So the electric trains will go the same speed as the diesels now? No, they go.
Well, they have better it's better. They have better performance, right? Electric trains have better performance than the diesel that we have, so they'll have better acceleration and deceleration. So we should be able to gain time, shorter trips with that, and then also be able to make more stops than we're making now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you asked the question, like, what's the baby bullet, the one that doesn't stop too much, take from San Jose to San Francisco, and then
about an hour.
And then what's the baby bullet electrified?
Yeah, I don't know that we've developed the schedule for that yet.
Okay, that's kind of the questions. Okay, Senator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being from Southern California, we take any and all money we can get, Metrolink and otherwise. But maybe I misunderstood, and if I did, I apologize. But with respect to some of the 2 specific spending items that I thought you spoke about, the positive crane control and the new locomotives, did that money come from the high-speed rail pot of money?
I believe there are different categories of funding from Prop 1A, all within the high-speed rail umbrella, but those 2 programs were funded by the general bond that supported Prop 1A.
And I could see positive train control perhaps, but I mean, the locomotives seem to have a tenuous relationship to high-speed rail. Again, I'm thankful you got the money, but I'm just curious.
I think essentially, and this was before my tenure at
This right here, right?
there was a program put together to highlight how we would be ready for high-speed rail once it came down to the Southern California region, the LA Basin. And with that program, we highlighted how we would expand capacity on our lines using high-powered locomotives and using some refurbishment of cars, as well as getting some sort of facilities ready in order to accommodate the loads that would come from the high-speed rail.
I see. It's to carry more people.
Carry more passengers.
Pull more cars.
Yes, essentially, our current locomotives are limited insofar as they can't carry more than the 6 cars that they are pulling now. We would have to engage an additional locomotive in order to carry more cars. These new locomotives can actually carry 10 cars at full standing loads across our steepest inclines of our system because of their higher horsepower rating. And that enables us to be ready for high-speed rail when it comes to Los Angeles for all of our lines to be able to operate with higher capacity.
I see. That explains it. Thank you very much.
That's a good one. Other questions? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, panelists. I appreciate you being here. We'll open up for public comment. Any public comment on the, please come forward. You can speak right there at the microphone, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Welcome. Welcome.
Is it on? Okay.
Yeah, you're on, sir.
First of all, I wanted to say my name is Marvin Dean. I'm here representing the Current Minority Contractors Association out of Bakersfield,
Okay.
which is in the Central Valley. I wanted to make some remarks about the high-speed rail in support of it, the staff comments, and also some things I heard while I was sitting here.
Yeah, go right ahead,
I have
sir.
a train that's going to leave here in about 45 minutes, so I'm going to have to get out of here pretty quick, so I'll be brief. First of all, Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned about the linking of infrastructure projects and workforce investment. We think that's an excellent idea, and if it's anything that's going to come out of a bill or something you need some help with, our association would very much want to work with you on that, because we think that that's
Oh, that's in the SB1 State Transportation Finance Measure, sir.
Well, I'll follow up with your staff to get more
Yes, sir.
information. The high-speed rail, and I would just ask that because of a lot of changing times right now in terms of the financing and a lot of the potential turmoil, that this legislature does not get cold feet with high-speed rail. We've got a lot of money and time invested in it, and just continue to just overcome the challenges and keep moving forward, because we think long-term this is going to benefit the entire state of California. Also, I serve on the High-Speed Rail Business Advisory Council, which is a 25-member statewide council that we're advocacy groups for small business. So a lot of the things that were discussed around the table earlier came out of the council, and we champion those things, and we think they're great that the high-speed rail staff is doing. As you know, Ground Zero in Kern County has not been as supportive as Fresno, but they're starting to come around now under the new leadership of Jeff and Dan. The city of Bakersfield, as you know, had a lawsuit in the Kern County Board of Supervisors. They settled those things, and they're now at the table trying to make sure that as this project's going to take place, that it does also benefit us here in Bakersfield. And we also support your comment about that they fill that gap to bring the project into downtown Bakersfield, because right now that's one of the shortfalls, and we want to see that happens. The only thing I would say that I would just ask that we continue to advocate for, that is along the corridor where these projects are built out, is that these environmental justice communities and the folks that live in those communities be more involved in benefiting from the projects. I know a lot is being done, but I think more can be done there. And the other part of it is that there be more diversity on some of these projects, and we're going to advocate for those, but other than that, everything is going very well, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention those things. So keep up the good work, and anything we can do here in my association in Kern County, we'll be more than happy to come and speak and do what we can.
Thank you, sir. You want to announce your job
yes.
contracting conference, so everybody that's watching on TV can
Thank you,
know about it.
Yeah, before I do that, let me mention this also. Last year, we're doing a conference, our 10th annual public contracting. It's a job in contracting how more small business folks and people of color can be involved in these public sector projects. It's going to be in April 21st. Last year, we worked with your staff because you were working on a bill that we tried to get you to come up, but there was a conflict with your staff. And you were going to try to get up there, but there was a problem. So I'm going to say that we might be reaching out to you to try to get you down to Bakersfield.
All right. I'll try to make it.
All right, thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's a nice 4.5-hour drive from San Jose, but I'm sure that I could try to make it that day. I have to talk to the boss, though, you know.
Thank you, and I'll follow with your staff.
My wife, Pat. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Keith Dunn for the Association of California High-Speed Train. I'm going to be checking my schedule to see if I can invite you to any events either coming up. I'll get back to your office on that. I'm going to let my colleagues from the building trades and labor fed talk about the jobs that are created. Don't want to brush over them, but they're going to talk about that. I want to talk just a little bit about the success of high-speed rail in communities and transforming them from job center housing areas where you're going to be able to see, from downtown Fresno, which today, if you've been there, doesn't have a ton to offer. But if you go to other places that have built these stations and transformed their communities, you can really see that they've turned into, from places that were really kind of bleak and not very user-friendly to really communities that are walkable, livable, and people have as destinations. So we're doing a great job. The planning's coming along, project's moving along. We have our challenges, but we're all committed, and these types of hearings are very helpful, and just like to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I'd like to thank you for holding this hearing. The hearings you've held like this every year, they're much more helpful, I believe, in providing oversight to this program than the myriad pieces of legislation that get introduced every year to redirect money, to do more oversight activities. It's clear that this project is under tremendous oversight already between this committee, the Assembly Transportation Committee, as well as the budget subcommittees that they have to go before every year. So thank you for holding this hearing. I'd like to just reiterate a couple points that were made. First of all, I thought it was breathtaking to hear a $500 million investment or leveraged investment in Fresno because of this project. This is exactly what this project is going to do. It's, 15 or $20 billion to get us from the Central Valley to Silicon Valley, but it's going to leverage so many more billions in these areas where stations are built. And secondly, to pick up on Mr. Morales' point about what our unions are doing in these areas, our apprenticeship programs are booming. Construction is up throughout the state. The Central Valley always lags behind whenever these recoveries happen. High-speed rail is a big reason why things are really booming in our apprenticeship programs in the Central Valley. And finally, I'd like to just let everybody know about helmets to hard hats. Mr. Morales mentioned that as well. That is the state building trades, national building trades, our local building trades. That's our program. We've been running that program for going on 15 years now throughout the country. It is placing veterans coming home from war in positions where they can work with their hands and use the skills they received in the military to become excellent construction workers. And it's important to remember that these workers getting trained in our apprenticeship programs, whether they're veterans or non-veterans, are going to be trained for a career after they're done with the high-speed rail project. And that's the point of this project, is to ramp up these programs, get these folks trained, they have a career.
Specific goal for veterans, disabled veterans. That was impressive that I heard.
Yes, exactly.
And we are joined by the chair of the Veterans Committee of the State Senate. Senator Newman is in the audience, and I'm sure he's going to be very interested in that.
Yes, thank you for raising that point, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Sarah Phlox, California Labor Federation. Just wanted to thank you again for this hearing and for the High-Speed Rail Authority for being here. When we started supporting this project and testifying in hearings like this, it was 2008, 2009, and it was the time when we would come up here and say that our trades had 50% unemployment. There were 50% of people in the trades on the bench in the Central Valley. And this really was the project that we held up. This was going to be the stimulus project that would put people back to work in the Valley and would be a stimulus for the economy. And have to say that I thought that video that was shown was so impressive to actually see the construction happening after we have advocated so long for it. People are back to work. People are able to have good middle-class jobs, to buy houses, to pay rent, to start shopping in communities in the Central Valley, in all of these areas across the state that needed economic stimulus so much. And this really is not just a transportation project and the largest transportation public works project in the nation, but it's an economic stimulus package for targeted areas of the state. So we are very thankful for that. I also wanted to put the cost of the project in context. Inaction on high-speed rail will cost much, much more. Without high-speed rail, the state would have to invest over $150 billion to build 4,000 new lanes of highway and 150 gates at airports just to move our population around the state. So really, compared to that, $64 billion is a bargain, especially with the economic stimulus. So we appreciate these hearings. We love getting the updates. I think that video is excellent. It should be shown all over, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, my name is Brandon Hastings. I come from Fresno City College with a group called I Will Ride. We support the high-speed rail. Thank you for holding this hearing. I just want to say a couple of things as to why I support the project, and from my generation's view, why I think it's so important. Two major things, obviously, would be the environment and investing in infrastructure. I come from Fresno. I'm a huge advocate of downtown Fresno. That's actually why I got interested in the high-speed rail originally. If this is somewhat accurate, I believe somebody that's involved in that told me that there is, I think, just over or under 1 million square footage on the Fulton Mall alone that's vacant. There's a lot of deteriorating buildings. There's a lot of misuse of space. And personally, I feel the effects of a generation that lived before me that didn't steward things properly or invest into the future, but they were selfishly just lived off of what they had. And so I see the high-speed rail project not as just a mandatory investment in connecting our state, but I love the way that the authority runs it and how they're being green. They're conscious of the communities around them, being conscious of our environment, being conscious of, revitalizing areas that have been down and being good stewards of our space. And so I'm grateful for the project. I'm happy to see it continue. I hope that everybody does everything they can to make it continue efficiently. And also, that this might be a staple for California moving forward in the future and future generations, that we don't repeat what the past generation did and we actually invest in our kids and the future generations.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When I went with Mayor Swearengin on a tour, and she told me she's enthusiastic about the high-speed rail.
Yeah.
She's no longer mayor, but she told me that. I'm sure she still is.
Yeah.
But there was a bus rapid transit line from am I right, from Fresno Community College to the high-speed rail station, isn't that correct?
I'm not sure if that's being constructed right now, but right now it's connecting a couple of our main busy streets.
They're trying to connect it, but there was a line that went from Fresno Community College downtown, and it would go to the station.
Yeah, that's
that plan, right? Am I right? Yeah, so that's a kind of connectivity to our academic institutions we want to have. And, I hope when I visit, I'm going to visit Fresno, I promised the councilman. So I'll go out there and visit Fresno Community College, Fresno State, and the city to learn more about the plan they have for that. So thanks for coming up here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Arlene Sodi, and I just graduated high school, and I'm currently a full-time student at Fresno City. My father is heavily involved in the political field in terms of hosting galas in favor of electing certain senators. I'm now, yeah, I know. He hosts them, so, for certain senators that he likes, and sometimes, they do get elected, so, yeah. I'm following in his political footsteps, and so here I am. This is the first time I've ever been to one of these, and I wholeheartedly support this project. I'm sure we're all cognizant that this will help with unemployment and small businesses, proving itself to be a fruitful long-term investment, but it will also help the environment, which is one of my main areas of concern. It's not a secret that a majority of my generation supports green companies, and the high-speed rail will help reduce our CO2 footprint, plant more trees, all with a zero net pollution and recycling. Another goal is the preservation of land. Now, scientists have recently come to the conclusion that every 24 hours, 150 to 200 species of plant, insects, birds, and mammals become extinct. That's every day. This is 1,000 times faster than the natural Earth rate, and we're going through a 6th mass extinction, which is not debatable. And this extinction crisis is purely man-made, with one of the main reasons being loss of habitat. So I'm just gonna leave you guys with this. Our biosphere will collapse if something isn't done soon, and the continuation of this project is a step in the right direction. So, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, last speaker, I guess.
Hello. I'm Maya Reese, and I'm also part of the I Will Ride with the Fresno City College. Sorry, this is my first time speaking. So first of all, it's been very exciting to see the construction happening around Fresno. I live very close to where it's all going down, so it's been very reassuring to kind of see all this stuff, because it's really like a testament to how the state, the federal government is kind of committed to looking into the Central Valley and kind of reminding us that we're not forgotten and that our economic development is important. And so, like, as mentioned before, Fresno has like one of the highest poverty rates in the state. And so for a tremendous project like this, and most importantly, an investment to happen in the Central Valley and Fresno, is very much, again, a reassurance that there is economic development happening in this area. And so I hope that the combined effects of the high-speed rail and then the downtown developments happening there will kind of stimulate, you know, a great amount of commerce and jobs there, because we need a lot of better paying jobs in Fresno. And so, like, I'm proud to support this project because it's such an efficient and environmentally conscious project that can bring about great economic and social change to the area and state. And this project is truly a project for my and future generations, so it's very exciting to see it happening already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the younger people that testified are making a clear vision, clearer than just about everybody up here in Sacramento, don't you? I think it was pretty clear what they want to see in their life for the future. So, well, thank you very much for this hearing. We'll adjourn the hearing and convene the Senate Committee on Transportation and Housing. And we have Senator Newman here. Senator Newman is going to present SCA 2 before this committee, and you have the floor, Senator. And you can call your witnesses. Thank you.
We have to call roll.
We are required to call roll. And we don't have a quorum yet, so we'll ask members to call the members and establish quorum so we can have a quorum on Senator Newman's constitutional amendment.
Senator.
And they'll be here in a second. There'll be So we're asking that members return to the chambers. There you go. Close. Yeah. Thanks, Ted. Anthony's not here. Yeah, he's
I'm not sure. Certainly. Listen, there's no hazy. This is Getting very hazy. Senator? Well done. It's a 4-posted day. I got a whole hearing for this. It's on. Senator Bell. Oh, damn. Got 5 out of 7. I understand I missed a movie. There's a movie? Did you see it? Good. Oh, it's brief. Yeah. But
Yeah, I think we ought to, can we call the absent members to the chamber so we can constitute a quorum, but as a committee, subcommittee, we will convene this hearing and ask Senator Newman to present his bill. So, Senator, you have the floor.
very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and Senators, first I want to commend you on your stamina for today's informational hearing. I'm here today to advocate on behalf of SCA 2, which will ensure that any future revenues passed by the legislature to pay for road and highway maintenance will only be spent on these vitally needed repairs. As you are all aware, the Senate, Assembly, and Governor are considering a number of options that would provide increased funding for transportation projects. These legislative measures are written with the intent of specifically funding road repair and maintenance, but prior history raises concerns that new transportation revenues may be diverted for other purposes. Given the urgency of the deferred maintenance backlog and the additional burden we are asking California's taxpayers to carry, it is important to provide Californians with a clear assurance that these new revenues will only be spent on repairing our aging infrastructure, reducing congestion, and otherwise supporting transportation improvements that foster economic development across the state in urban, suburban, and rural areas alike. SCA 2 will create a necessary and prudent framework for the constitutional protections that will be needed to safeguard new revenues, and it will be updated to set up the proper protections that reflect the finalized transportation package. I respectfully ask for your aye vote, and Mark Watts is here with me today if you have questions and for technical assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Witnesses in favor, please.
Well, I might as well start. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, members, Mark Watts. I'm here on behalf of Transportation California, a coalition of contractors and allied labor. We've been working with the author's office, very supportive of the effort to put a lockbox package together. We've found it from day one as we've pursued transportation financing for our deferred maintenance in the state of California that in addition to the revenues, we find it very important to have reforms to accompany it. In addition, we want to make sure that the protections that are on the books are strengthened and applied to whatever package they may emerge. I was also asked today by CalCog's Director Bill Higgins to indicate that they have the same perspective on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take the next witness, could we call roll, please, to constitute quorum, please?
Senator Bell?
Here.
Bell present. Canella? Allen? Allen present. Atkins? Atkins present. Bates? Gaines? Gaines present. McGuire? Mendoza? Mendoza present. Morel? Roth? Roth present. Skinner? Skinner present. Wachowski? Wachowski present. Weiner?
We got a quorum. Witnesses in favor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Keith Dunn here on behalf of the Self-Help Counties Coalition. The 24 counties that have passed local sales taxes, we like to say promises made, promises kept. And we put that in as a motto with our expenditure plans, where we go out and interact with our communities, hear what they want, write it up in a plan, and then follow the plan. We're very excited to see the state is following in that direction, putting protections in for resources that are going to be dedicated to transportation infrastructure. We think it's critical. Promises made, promises kept has kept the faith of the voters. 2/3 of the voters and most of, I think, everyone on this panel is local citizens in your county. So please to support SCA 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council, also here in support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Joe Cruz on behalf of the California State Council of Laborers appreciate the Senator's leadership on this issue and want to work towards making this SCA better. Understand that a long-term, reliable funding source is important to rebuilding California's infrastructure, and look forward to working with you.
Chris Lee on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. We also think that constitutional protections to ensure that any new revenues are dedicated and protected for transportation purposes are going to be a vital part of any deal, and we look forward to working with the Senator, making sure that everything's locked up. Thanks.
Orville Thomas from the California Alliance for Jobs, conceptually supportive of the Senator and the pending legislation for protecting transportation revenues. Look forward to working with you guys as we get closer to SCA 2.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, members, Brett Barrow with the United Contractors here in support today and look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any additional speakers in favor? If we have none, can we have speakers opposing this? Any speakers opposing? There's a motion. We have questions. Senator Wachowski.
One of my favorite items is the vehicle license fee, because we've had, in 1931, we had a vehicle license fee that was established at 2%. And it had been that way for 65 years. And that's a sales tax. That's not a transportation tax. It's a sales tax on the value of the personal property, not sales tax, personal property tax. So like, you know, heavy equipment that's located in a community and this has a personal property equipment. So it seems like this is looking at excise taxes, the constitutional protections that we've had, but we've never included VLF in, and there's no VLF proposal going on right now. There's nobody's talking about it other than you and I right now. So it's, I guess, as the bill is right now, or the constitutional amendment does not include VLF as best as I've been able to read through it. And I just want to ask you if that's your understanding.
Senator, if I might like to respond to that, yes, you're correct. There is no reference to the VLF. The portion of the VLF that's been protected for local governments at 0.65% is already on the books, and there's no additional VLF protection in this. Senator Huff did include VLF last year in his measure, so that may be top of mind looking at this new measure, but that was stricken by this committee last year.
No, I was here. I asked him some questions about that because I just want to be sure that we all know that VLF was always local government's money, and we cut it, and the Terminator cut it again, and then we need to, you know, if that is restored, that should at least up to 2% in the spirit of the 1931 Act or 1930 Act should be that we continue to give that to local governments. So with that clarification, I appreciate it.
Senator Gaines. Yes, Senator Gaines, you have the floor.
Yeah, I was just wanted to see if I could get some clarification on the weight fee issue, because certainly a bone of contention that we've had was that money was redirected. And so is there any way to fix that issue?
And the question, Senator Gaines, with respect to the redirection of the weight fees?
Yeah, historically going back in time.
So I'll let Mark speak to the technical side. So the SCA takes a very agnostic approach to the particular elements, and it endeavors to assure that any of the final package that are finally, you know, of the various elements that are incorporated into a bill that passes will be protected moving forward. And so Mark could probably speak a little bit to late fees specifically.
Sure, there is a provision in this constitutional amendment that would allow some late fees to be used for general obligation bond debt service. That's to accommodate the ultimate final adoption of language, because in both bills that are extant right now that focus on this, Senator's measure as well as the chairman and the assembly both contemplate returning 50% of the late fees. So the structure is in place to be, to allow that to happen, so.
I like your bill. I would like to see what that final language is, so I think I'll lay off for now, and hoping that I can support it on the Senate floor.
And I'd say that's fair. And so what you can expect is as the final bill takes shape, SB 1 or an alternative, we will amend our language to take that into account.
Great, thank you.
Have no more questions. We have a motion on the floor. Senator, would you like to close?
Thank you for your consideration. I urge and I vote.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for this bill, and we'll call the roll.
This is SCA 2 by Senator Newman. The motion is due pass and re-referred to the Committee on Elections and Constitutional Amendments. Senators Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Cannella? Allen? Allen, aye. Atkins? Atkins, aye. Bates? Bates not voting. Gaines? Not voting. McGuire? Aye. McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. Morel? Roth? Aye. Roth, aye. Skinner? Aye. Skinner, aye. Wachowski? Aye. Wachowski, aye. Wiener? We have 8.
8 votes in favor. It passes. We'll leave the roll open for absent members. So any members that are absent wishing to vote, please join us and cast your vote. We'll leave the roll open. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Call the roll, please.
Senator Wiener? Aye. Wiener, aye.
We have 9 votes in favor. We're adjourned. Thank you.